Good evening and welcome to the Town Council workshop regarding the Scuttle Hill Road options. It is Wednesday, February 4th, 2026. We have a full complement of councilors here with the exception of Councilor John Anderson, who is traveling for work and may or may not be able to join us online. In a moment, I'm going to turn it over to staff to give us a presentation and kind of run through the options, and then we'll have some council Q&A and discussion. Couple quick housekeeping notes. One, is that we do have about an hour and a half here before our 7 o'clock business meeting. If we do have time after councilor Q&A and any discussion, we'll open it up for public comment. If we run out of time, then folks who still want to make public comment can do so during the general public comment period at the start of our 7 o'clock meeting. I also want to note that we'll be having a Council Corner Live on this topic. I believe it's a week from tomorrow, February 12th, over at the Public Safety Building. So that'll be another opportunity for discussion and will be a little more conducive to, more extended public comment and maybe a little bit of back and forth. So with that, I will hand it over to town staff.
Yeah, I'll be pleased to. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this evening, myself and Angela Blanchette, town engineer, will kind of share the presentation, if you will. We do have Jamie Fitch, the sustainability coordinator, and Doug Howard, our Public Works Director, here should we need their assistance, and that may be possible. So let's just start kind of providing some background and context that brings us together here. So maybe the overview slide, there you go. So Beaverbrook goes, generally through this area of town. I believe it certainly crosses under Payne Road and under Scuttle Hill Road. Beaverbrook is the source of this area in particular has been not new to us. In fact, we've done some fairly significant repairs back in the spring of 23. There was a sinkhole that started, which is fairly typical. Doug and his crew excavated, kind of exposed and understood that the pipe was deteriorating. They put some fabric down and then a metal plate and then backfilled and paved. And we got probably 18 months out of that. And then in May of 25, everything kind of reappeared, and to the point that we had to actually close the road. And so, here we are, 8 months into it, or 9 months. So that's really kind of where this all started. What's in place are four 4-foot corrugated metal culverts. That was kind of the standard bearer, for decades, frankly. And those, of course, we know from experience, deteriorate over time. Typically, the bottom rots out and everything kind of sinks. And in fact, the whole thing can rot out. And in this area, it does get some tidal flow. So there's some salt, reaction as well, which I don't think helps our cause either. So at any rate, that's what really kind of caused us to close the road and start to understand what our options are. Angela, to her credit, was able to convene a meeting of appropriate town staff and state and federal agencies, all of those who are involved with the permitting aspects, about a week later on June 11th on site. And at that meeting was was Angela and Doug and some of his team, also our design engineer, ARC. And then from the federal government, Army Corps of Engineers, who was the predominant regulatory and permitting agency in this case. And then from the state, we had DEP and DMR. So we really had all the players quickly assembled. And what we learned really in that instance, in that conversation, was that this is a tidal flow through this area, which is not a great surprise to us. I was talking with Jack Flaherty earlier, who has a long history on this land, and just commented that over the years, the salt content generally in all the water bodies around that area of Scarborough have changed considerably. So that being a tidal crossing, it does introduce some different and unique regulatory limits. Namely, we really can't do any work in the area between April and November. So we're limited in that regard. So immediately we're already within the window of not being able to kind of do anything. We also appreciated from the regulatory agencies and from our own experience that really replacing in kind is not an option. We really need to, as part of this, make sure we're upsizing and properly sizing the infrastructure to deal with the present and future conditions. And then they certainly discussed what minimum standards and regulations they would be requiring. And then maybe some options that we could consider beyond that. We also, no surprise, had some funding challenges. This was unanticipated. It was not provided for in the budget. So that's a factor that has to be considered in this. And there's also certain windows for grant opportunities in terms of when those open for grant application and award. All of that needs to be understood and certainly respected. So given kind of the uniqueness, it really provided us an opportunity to explore options. In other cases, we don't have an option. We have to make immediate repairs. I should also mention, and I don't say this flippantly and dismissive to those that live on it and rely on that road, but if you look at traffic volumes, it uniquely is one of the lower volume roads in town. And so can and seemingly has withstood an extended closure as we consider these options. So we almost immediately embarked on exploring what the grant opportunities are and identified that initially there were 7 grants. Pretty quickly realized that the grants at the federal level, 2 of them, this project did not meet the criteria for those grants for one reason or another. And then 3 others were still seemingly available, but they were no longer funded. And so, that fairly quickly we kind of worked through and realized that we're really focusing on 2 grants, and those being the Main Infrastructure Adaptation Fund. The challenge with that, though that was kind of an existing state program, essentially the state culvert grant program historically, the opening of that grant hasn't occurred yet. It will open in, the deadline is May of this spring. And so having known that, we kind of put a pin in it and said we need to come back to that. And we'll talk about that in more detail tonight. And then the other grant that frankly we became aware of specifically at that first meeting with Army Corps, they suggested that we consider this grant, the Natural Resources Conservation Program. You may recall this is the same funding source that we had identified and secured for the Sawyer Street. These are monies that are essentially controlled by Army Corps. There's a committee that evaluates applications. And so from very early on, we were made aware of this, and not only made aware, but encouraged to apply. And in fact, you'll hear as we go that we did just that to preserve an option that is available and in front of us tonight. All right. So 2 different grants, excuse me, for the Main Infrastructure Adaptation Fund. This requires a resilient design, and this is really in line with the state's program of Maine Won't Wait, the Climate Action Plan. The design criteria will align with our vulnerability assessment. This is really the sort of approach that was embraced throughout our vulnerability assessment. It does require something called coastwise sizing, and I'll certainly defer to Angela and Jamie what that means, but it's a whole set of design criteria different than kind of conventional engineering design. And again, as I mentioned earlier, this program does not open until March with applications due in May. The funding is also not available until 2027, which is a major consideration. So that you're going to hear for us a pretty important theme here is what is the funding available to us, and what's the timeline look like? Because all of those are 2 critical factors.
I was going to talk a little bit about this grant opportunity. And so when we see this coming, like again, we saw it for Sawyer Street. And when Army Corps mentioned it, one of the first things staff, now that we have a vulnerability assessment that the council adopted, this is kind of our go-to to look at, okay, where do we want to apply for grants? Looking at our top 30 ranked vulnerable roads in town. And so this is actually the list out of the vulnerability assessment, and noting that Scotto Hill Road is listed as number 41. So it is, in the list. But I just want to point out that this ranking is really based on a consequence score. So it's not just looking at, okay, how likely are these to flood? It also talks about public safety impacts, like talking about evacuation routes, if it's cutting off, how many houses is it cut off? What's the overall area impact? What's damage potential, environmental impacts, and even economic impacts all got factored into that. And that criteria was discussed through the stakeholder group meeting when we went through formulating the vulnerability assessment. And so there was a lot of time and attention put to how you weight each of those kind of components. And then everything was put into an equation. So you come out with, here's kind of the output. And then we did obviously kick the tires on it and kind of looked at, does this actually make sense? And I think what we heard from the public was that it definitely made sense. And we're kind of these top 30 aligned. And so on here, I have highlighted the few evacuation routes. But when we compared that to the eligibility for this grant, a lot of them go away, as you can say, grade out. It is not eligible for state aid or state roads. So it really looks at kind of the local roadways. 2 evacuation routes are still listed in here. But again, you can look at what impact does that have if Ocean Ave goes down, or as compared to, say, Winnick's Neck Road. So those were all things that were that this grant funding we could apply for. We do have to choose one, and Scotto Hill Road is eligible. So I just want to point that out.
Important note, no, we can't put in more than 1 grant application. So part of the consideration here, if we choose not to go this route, there are other worthy candidates, and we will certainly apply for grants for other projects. But we wanted to reserve and preserve this grant for Scotto Hill because that's the most urgent and pressing need right now.
Can I just ask a quick question?
Mhm.
I was surprised to find the street I live off of on here, so that was a little bit eye-opening. When you look at it from a state perspective, Tom, this is a priority for Scarborough. So if we're looking at state funding, have they taken a look at like all the whole list for the state of Maine and then figured out like where these would fall within the broader scope of the state?
So the state has road classifications, and so a state road is simply by definition of this grant program is not eligible for these funds. So it's intended for local roads, and that's what you see on this table
So
here.
the state DOT does assess their culverts, so their transportation infrastructure. So they do have a work plan and try to address kind of and prioritize their culverts. They are definitely underfunded for the amount of infrastructure that they have. And in conversations that we've had through regional like PAX meetings, and even as we had Joyce Taylor, the deputy commissioner from DOT at transportation, DOT is really looking at the fact that they have so much infrastructure that they can't actually maintain it. So when they start looking at vulnerable roadways and culvert crossings, they're actually now considering options of removal also. It's just part of one of the options now that probably wasn't looked at, say 10 years ago, wasn't in their vocabulary. And now it has to be considered because they just can't consistently kind of maintain all.
For the state, when they, in talking to Joyce Taylor, or when they consider removal, it really is the bridge infrastructure that the state owns and maintains that has a
with
huge.
culverts, are bridges in DOT's
Right.
definition, so.
I'll also say there's an active move on the part of the state to devolve and really give what were for centuries in some cases state roads to the locals. They'll kind of put a nice spiffy coat of pavement on it, paint some nice stripes on it, and say, here you go. And so that's happening. It's happened and will continue to happen, frankly.
And I think that's why these kind of grants are available, saying, okay, we'll put a pot of money and the municipalities can figure out on these local roads. And for which municipalities are proactively kind of seeking this out and trying to get these fixed. Okay. Thank you.
Anderson has a question.
I have a quick question. So Tom, you or Angela said, I can't remember, that we can only do this for one road. Does this grant, is it a multi-year grant where, again, we go with an application for Scotto Hill first this year, hopefully get it, and then we can apply for other roads in the future? Or is it really a one-time only grant?
No, I believe it should be reoccurring. It's subject to funding, of course, and the challenges of that. But theoretically, it is an ongoing grant program. We will be eligible to apply for a single project every year. Yes.
And that's what they have said is that it's not funded for next year yet. So it's a year by year basis if how that's funded.
And just before we move off the slide, what I'm struck with, and I think in my mind it came up in the Sawyer Street discussion, is that we've got a lot of need. And frankly, I don't know that we have many opportunities for doing something other than fixing our infrastructure and kind of doing what we've always done. That's why in my mind Sawyer Street made some sense. That's why I think there's the potential that Scotto Hill falls somewhat in that bucket. Other roads, we simply don't have the option. It would be looking at a conventional fix. So I think it's worthy that we're taking the time. I know it's been inconvenient to some, that we understand the options and make the right choice for our residents and for the bottom line too.
And so this grant opportunity is for, like I said, the more resilient culvert replacement design. And so the other grant opportunity we talked about was the Maine Natural Resource Conservation Program. And this is geared towards the removal and restoration of Beaver Brook. And essentially as developers in the region fill wetlands, they actually write a check, an in lieu fee to the state of Maine. That's how these funds get collected and accumulated. And I think the reason it came up in a lot of these conversations, like, again, wasn't really discussed before. And so when we got Sawyer Street, again, it was Army Corps coming to us. Here, we were having a conversation. They recommended that we at least apply and see, it doesn't hurt for another option in our toolbox. But I think the reason they're mentioning Scarborough is one of the highest for permitted wetlands through the state. We have a lot of wetland fill happening in our community. And so I think they would love to put it back in Scarborough. So I think that's been kind of the focus is instead of putting it, say, up in Oxford, they're like, and doing restoration work, doing it here in our region has been a challenge because a lot of people are just filling and not restoring these wetland areas. And so that's why it has been coming up in conversations with some of those communities that are faster growing and developing and filling a lot of wetland
It would be
areas.
nice to have some of the fees that are paid for wetland impacts in our town actually used to in a positive way. And we've had very few opportunities for that.
So we're subsidizing a lot of activity in the state.
Well, the fees that are paid for wetland impacts go to the state. They don't come to us. And it's far and few between where there's a project that actually brings them back to be used in the same watershed.
So we did submit an application in September, and they went through a grant review committee that was formulated by a bunch of different state and federal agencies weigh in. And this project was recommended for funding. I will say I think there were 3 applications for our region and 1 withdrew. So there is no other project behind us. So either we take, if we don't accept the money, which is part of this conversation tonight, it just goes back in the pot for next year's funding opportunities for projects.
Yeah, 2 things on that. This grant, it was a fairly expansive application project, thorough. There were a number of follow-up questions. We were very careful and thoughtful about not overcommitting, knowing that it requires a full public process, and even including a full road discontinuance process. And so we've been very clear in writing to the agency what limitations we have and that the council ultimately needs to accept this. So I'd be confident that we've not overcommitted ourselves in that regard. Okay.
All right. Do you feel like there's a deadline for our response?
No, we have reached out, I think after the Sawyer Street conversations and what happened there, I think they have also established kind of a new process in saying we want to make sure all of the public process has happened before we finalize agreements. They're in no rush to get us into, say, a contract or an agreement until the town is comfortable where that is. It's very clear they don't want to push this down anybody's throat, so they want to make sure that we're all on the same page, and did not appear to be in any rush to get that.
And on that
at
note,
time.
just before we continue, for those watching here or remotely, just want to reiterate, no decisions have been made about this. The grant that's been awarded is a door that's been opened. But we've not made any decisions. We will not be making any decisions tonight or at the Council Corner Live event next week. It'll be at a subsequent meeting. This is all part of the information gathering and deliberation process. Thanks.
So trying to simplify it, there are basically two alternatives: the culvert replacement approach, which there are two options, and the culvert removal and stream restoration. So under the culvert replacement options, there's the minimum kind of to be done, which is essentially replacing the bare minimum. What you'll see as we go forward, that's all done at the local level. There's no grant opportunity for that approach, and we've costed that out, and we'll show you. And then the other option is the resilient culvert replacement, which we've talked about. There is grant funding that we could apply for. And then for culvert removal and stream restoration, Angela just spoke to that grant. We actually have that in hand. That option is even more certain than others, frankly, only in that we have heard back from the agency or the committee that it has been accepted. And then under that, there's a number of optional things that we could do. Frankly, I don't know that we have to do any of them, but I think it's worth talking about in terms of mitigating additional traffic or mitigating traffic caused by the road closure and improving some already existing safety issues. And we'll touch on that in a moment. But again, I categorize those as optional. I don't know that they must be done, but I think they're worth talking about.
So for a minimum culvert replacement, this was a conversation, like I said, we had with Army Corps, who is the permitting agency, and looked at what would be the smallest kind of footprint or opening that we could put in there. The cost estimate is based on our engineer's estimate that came from Atlantic Resource Consultant, and then factoring in some additional, that's construction, design, permitting, other things. That's all based on, it's really a budgetary estimate. There is no design, there is no geotech information. So there's a lot of things that have to play into that as far as the footing and the foundation for a type of structure like this. I think based on kind of engineering practices and standards, we have certain contingencies in place. So we're feeling comfortable that this is a good budgetary number, but kind of moving through the process that will continue to fluctuate as we kind of gain more information. It also, because it's a local road, we would be utilizing 100% of local funds. That allows us to kind of have this option for minimum culvert replacement. And I guess I'm calling it short-term design just because of the next one, we're talking about undersizing culverts. We have a lot of undersized culverts around town, so it's very obvious in certain places. And then with this location in particular, just downstream of it is the Route 1 Marsh Crossing, which DOT is finalizing their designs, which will actually open up the flow under Route 1, so allow more tidal flow to come up in. On top of that, we're looking at kind of the increased intensity of rainstorms. So really looking at the inland flow coming down. And these are really, this and the Payne Road culvert above it are really the pinch points. And because Payne Road, just upstream of this, is on a state aid road, we would be required to put that in under those Maine Won't Wait, kind of the vulnerability assessment kind of guidance to do a more resilient culvert. So that is something that we have been trying to pursue, looking at grants opportunities for the 3 Payne Road culverts. We just did was part of a regional application through GPCOG. We were not funded for that, but we are going to continue that as one of the priorities in the vulnerability assessment because of obviously the vulnerability of Route 1, and Payne Road is the only way kind of really around that route. So thinking that because the upstream and downstream will open up and allow more flow, as soon as this goes in, it's undersized if we look at a minimum culvert such as this. So I'm thinking it short term until DOT does their project and we get our Payne Road culvert
For us
funded.
non-engineers, and I know we've not
Yeah.
designed it, but the picture shown in the back, is that emblematic of the minimum culvert?
That's similar, what they're looking at, yes, it might be off by a few feet or something, but it's a 5 by 20 foot culvert.
The
Yeah.
so-called Bucks culvert.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, it's a substantial structure, even the minimum.
How much,
Yeah.
how much would it be to increase that just a little bit to make it a more long-term thing? In other words, you're talking 1.2 million, would it increase it to 2 million? Or would it just increase it a few $100,000?
Yeah, I mean, I guess there are stages, and you'll see the next one is the resilient culvert design. So if you're asking if there's something in between the two,
Yes.
I think regardless, you're gonna end up with this being the pinch point then. So say you have this is a 20-foot opening, and then upstream of it, you have a 40-foot opening.
Right.
This is, I mean, to do a 35 is still not adequate, you know what I mean? So those aren't the numbers, but as you can see, that becomes the pinch point no matter what, unless you size it for the same that you're going to do for the Payne Road culvert, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Question when you talk about the DOT, because I know we recently were informed that one of the proposals for Route 1 going across the marsh is to make Route 1 north, 1 lane. And so, when I think about, okay, eliminating 1 lane north, you might have people off of Broad Turn who are like, I'm not taking Broad Turn to Route 1 anymore. I want to take the cut through. So I don't know if that's a consideration, if that's the plan coming down, if we need to now kind of navigate the fact that Route 1 north across the marsh is 1 lane and we have residents all west who might not want to come that way anymore and get around that.
That is definitely part of, I guess, my concern and
Yeah.
that I've conveyed to DOT. And I think that's why we actually started down the path of a pilot program, a pilot project to
Right.
look at it, because once it's permanent, it's permanent. And what they have calculated that it would not change the mobility of that corridor. So I think it's going to be important to see that.
I'll believe it when I see it.
To your point,
Uh,
though, I think it's something that we can collect. The whole point is collecting data during that,
Right.
right? So we can also put data collectors on Payne Road and establish what kind of impacts that has. And my process would be, we need to do things to kind of throttle down what's heading to Payne Road, and there's ways we can do
Right.
that.
And then my other question is, if the DOT is going to come in and they're going to raise Route 1, what is their obligation to support the effects of them raising it? So they're going to raise it. They know that our culvert right now is broken, can't handle it. Do they have an obligation to step in and fund the, like the outskirts,
Yeah.
like the side roads that are now going to be impacted from that? Because I mean, let's do a quick fix if the DOT is going to come in 2 years and be obliged to do it if we're opening up the floodgates per se, or if they're like, hands off, we don't care, you deal with all the flooding that we've just created. I'm kind of wondering how that plays in.
We had the conversation. I don't think they're obligated to fix it. This is a local road, so I don't see this as being a priority. I think, again, it would be, it's a different conversation. I will say, as we were going through this, and we've noted to them that the 3 Payne Road culverts were one of the priorities in our vulnerability assessment, I think we would have the support of DOT in a grant like this. So the DOT is at the table as far as a review agency for some of these grants. And so I think it puts us in a better light when we apply for these, because they want us to fix like you said, that's gonna happen. How can they support us? They support us through giving us, through these grant processes.
Right.
And this is a DOT grant.
The DOT for its purposes has acknowledged that there'll be more flow on the north side of Route 1 because of the larger opening. And that impact will certainly be felt at the crossing on Payne Road. It's just below Flaherty's, not at Flaherty's. So I think that's been part of the conversation right along, for sure.
So that's why I think we'd have a better chance at the adaptation grant because of the fact that DOT is part of that conversation and knows the bigger picture of what's happening in the surrounding area.
I had another question that, where that is, I looked at it and under Flaherty's actually building is a bridge over it,
Mhm.
the creek. And then you do have Payne Road and there must be a culvert there
Yeah.
too.
Yep.
What's the condition of that culvert?
That is also, they're also metal culverts, but they're larger and fewer. But that floods out. It's all part of the vulnerability. I think in the previous slide.
So that is also,
You can see the flooding. That's from a screenshot from the vulnerability assessment. And so that is, yes.
that'll have to be addressed also. We hope-
Correct. And so we are already, when that vulnerability assessment came out, we were just kind of looking at pilot projects and different
Right.
things. And the prioritization of that, looking for grant opportunities for that. And so that is why we tried to partner with more of a regional, where it has like large sums of money for, say, 30 culverts in the greater Portland area. That's where we're kind of thinking to get a bigger bite of the
Right.
apple. Unfortunately, we weren't funded, but doesn't mean that we can't continue to find,
Yeah.
those sources.
It's pretty unique that we have, two sets of culverts,
Right.
200 feet
That
apart
close,
from each other, maybe a little more.
Yeah, the same creek, yeah.
Yeah.
The other option there is, and this may be way off the wall, but just putting it out there and something to talk about. If you get the grant to close it, say, and put it back to Marsh, how would the Flaherty's be rerouting the road above their greenhouses and going straight across through the Payne Road, so you don't have to go across?
Well, we do have an option later on talking about a bypass road.
Yeah.
Yep. So that's part of,
Oh, okay, you're gonna be discussing it, okay.
Yeah, we haven't had the conversation with the Flaherty's using some of their land for a new road section.
Right, and
it'd be the abutting
and they
property.
may not want to, and I have no interest in forcing them to.
Right.
either.
Right.
Yeah.
So I guess we kind of touched,
Go ahead.
oops. Go back.
One more.
We touched on a little bit the resilient culvert replacement. I will say this number for estimate, again, no design work has been done. We didn't have any funding for that yet. So this is based on a similar exercise we did with Sawyer Street, is looking at the DOT 3-year work plan. And I do have kind of the supporting document around behind that, but looking at, I narrowed it to York County and Cumberland County, because doesn't make sense for me to look at a culvert in Presque Isle, but as far as construction costs go. So looking at York and Cumberland County, and then I took out kind of highs and lows, because there are some nuances, as well as there were a few that were pretty high in the Cumberland County area, because they were right, like, for instance, one in South Portland at Mill Creek, where traffic was probably $1 million in traffic control type of thing. So we did look at it close enough to kind of like take out those kind of nuances, and ended up with kind of an estimate or average for that area. And a DOT did provide some comment of that it seemed liked with for this size project. So we felt comfortable with kind of moving forward with this as a budgetary estimate to present.
DOT also replaced the bridge at Mitchell Hill Road, at the Nonsuch, and so there's some, more local examples as well. Not exactly the same, but it's a comparison.
And so the resilient culvert is obviously recommended through the vulnerability assessment that we spent, and our residents spent a lot of time and effort and money putting together and saying, here's how we're going to move forward with kind of these projects. So that was one thing. And then as we keep mentioning, Coastwise is really, I think you might have heard about Stream Smarts and like looking at kind of how they size it for 1.2 bank full width, so it's a little larger than the bank. This is a little different because this is specifically for tidal crossings. And so the state has some guidance around what you do with a tidal crossing, based on kind of all of the, I mentioned before the more intense and frequent rain events, and our kind of climate, and storm surge stuff like that. It all factors into that. And then looking at this as kind of the long-term planning, around that upstream flow coming down. It looks like John has a.
Yeah.
Yeah, Angela, I did. Given what was just discussed about Route 1 and DOT, what do you think is the probability that we would actually be awarded the MIAF grant if we applied for it?
I think we have a good shot. I mean, it's just a one piece, it's the baby step. I know Payne Road is the big nut to crack. So I would hope they would see this as kind of phase one of our two-phase, approach. And we actually, you'll see in the documents, if you look at our application for the removal, it was the same type of thing, saying, okay, if this gets removed, our step 2 would be upgrading the Payne Road culvert to enlarge that to a resilient structure. And so I think with any of these grant opportunities, we're trying to pose it as we need to get over this hurdle in order to get to the next one, which is obviously the more important one for, I would say, the state looking at it, because
But to your point, Counselor, there is risk, I suppose, in
Yeah.
that we don't know, we're not certain. And I suppose we will know by May, is that right? Or
we
they're due by
apply-
May.
Yeah, we apply in May.
Do you know when we would know?
That's further down.
August? So John, we're hearing that those grant awards would be announced in August of this year. Again, I would remind us, all these, when we're talking time, once we get past the April date, we've got another 6 months to wait. And so I'm not saying that that is a good thing, but that's a reality of the situation. So if we're not able to get something done this spring, which I don't see any option for us to do that, I think we're looking at fall of 26 as the earliest possible we could get anything meaningful done, frankly.
The
Right.
MIAF one is, you were saying, wouldn't be funded till 27, is that right?
That's right. Award in August, funded in 27.
All right, let's see if we can let you guys finish your
Okay.
presentation.
good.
and then- no, These are all good questions, absolutely.
So the alternative 2 is, I know we're kind of bouncing around a little bit, was the culvert removal and stream restoration. So we did get some initial costs of just, if we go out there and cut the road and we rip out culverts and then you add stone, it's a very much lower number. However, this number, this 884, is really based on the criteria of the grant we talked about, the MNRCP grant, which has monitoring, and a work plan. There's a lot of hoops that you have to jump through, which would be funded through the grant, but that's where that cost kind of, it does look absorbent when you're looking at it, like, I'd go out there and rip out a culvert. But there's a lot more to it when you go through how you should do it correctly and restoring that stream and replanting and all of that. So that's where those numbers came from. It's really kind of following the guidance of how they would develop a work plan around it. And then looking at, again, a long-term solution, we would have to construct a hammerhead at Scotto Hill Road. And that is similar to what we talked about at Sawyer Street. There's similar cost funding around that. And it does require the permanent road closure. And so we'd have to go through that discontinuance process through council for that. What we're calling is optional additional measures. I know it's a lot, but it's additional things we can do, but maybe don't necessarily have to do. One, talking about a bypass road, there is the next property up. A developer has gone through the planning board sketch plan and has done a full survey design. They are intending to build a private road that would connect Scotto Hill to Payne Road just above this kind of crossing. And with that, so we did look at the design is far enough along that it's actually some pretty good pricing and numbering to be able to look at the estimates and say, what would it cost for, say, us to partner and upgrade a private road to a public street? The majority of that cost is paving. So that's where the 300,000 number initiated from. Would be if we kind of piggybacked on a project that's already happening, just the next parcel up. It would provide that kind of relief to kind of offset some that's going down probably Two Rod Road. And then we looked at, are there other things that need to get mitigated for traffic? I will say, we did look at traffic counts for Scotto Hill Road prior to the closure. We looked at the numbers for Two Rod and Milliken Road, looking at kind of some of the, maybe those are the most impacted for changes that they're seeing for traffic. Those volumes, I'm gonna say pre-culvert failure, are very low. Some of the lowest numbers. So the roads themselves have a capacity as a public street. They do have the capacity to handle a lot more flow. I understand that doesn't mean that it's convenient for those living on the road. And so that's where I think if the council chooses, we could look at things how, not necessarily needing to add like a lane to Two Rod Road. It'd be more of looking at, do we need to calm traffic? Are people going too fast? You have that number of traffic, volume of traffic increases. Do we need to look at slowing that traffic down? Do we need to look at safety concerns, say at Two Rod and Payne Road, where we have more turning movements, or other places that we can kind of look at to say it's more about safety and probably speeds more than anything, because I think the roads could handle the traffic. It's just, I'm sure it's a pressure from the neighborhoods it goes through. So kind of looking at how that gets addressed.
I do have a question about the cut through, because I looked at your last slide and one of those things is, should we pursue a cut through? So I want to really make sure that I understand the cut through, because
Yep.
I don't know, just with the planning board, I know that I've heard of the development and I want to understand, a developer comes in with a private property and now we're saying we want to use your private road as a main cut through. Is the developer aware of that? Is he okay with that? Does it decrease property values when now like suddenly our little neighborhood with a cut through is now like the main cut through? And
Yeah.
also that section on Payne Road is disastrous where it's coming right down a hill. So I think
Yeah.
I really want to understand the alternative, because I just don't think it's a great alternative, I guess. And so I just really want to make sure I'm understanding it and everyone else is.
Yeah, we have had conversations with the developer. As you allude to, I think he's interested to know, just kind of thinking out loud, that what does it do to the sale of his homes? The good news is the homes haven't been built yet. And so I think all that can be considered. He, without commitments, I think he was willing to work with us. And so I think that's an opportunity that's in front of us that doesn't require acquisition of land and kind of building something brand new. We do have a map and we can show you what the traffic volumes are that might.
Germany go with that.
It's just that's,
Yeah.
people go really fast down that hill and I think that doesn't seem like a safe alternative.
We characterize that as an option.
Yeah.
Frankly, I don't know that you need to do anything, but I think if you want to do something to accommodate traffic that used to be using Scotto Hill Road or a portion of that traffic, or provide improvements to other roads that we, intuition is that they're receiving some of that traffic now. There are some options there and they're fairly low cost in the whole scheme of things.
It's too large or.
One other thing, where Scotto Hill Road is now, it's an intersection. And you stop and then you go straight across the road and go in. And if you divert it and make it so that people take a left and then they're gonna have to take a right, when they're taking the right, that is gonna slow traffic down. Whereas before they waited for an opening and get across, now they're gonna have traffic when they pull out, getting behind them, and then they have to take a right.
So
So maybe have a right turn lane, maybe.
this is at Beach Ridge Road. I'm not sure where you're talking
I'm
about.
talking about, yeah, Beach Ridge Road where it crosses on, you come out of Beach Ridge, because that's what the traffic is coming from really, right? Isn't it? A lot of it from there, or is it coming from Dunstan and then turning onto Scott Hill? I don't know why anybody would want to do that.
A bit of both, but I think you're right. Beach, it's probably, more than likely, it's folks cutting through to head somewhere north
Right.
Scarborough and
Right.
using Beach Ridge Road.
Right.
It would be illogical for them to do that, then to go down Payne Road, to get back on Route 1 under Broad Turn. So I think Beach Ridge is probably the destination.
Right.
And we did look at the crash location, that is a high crash location that you pointed out. We did look at the crashes there, and so obviously since the culvert failure, it has significantly been reduced, but I would say not eliminated. So to your point, people coming down Beach Ridge, there was one that just took a right and went all the way across, I mean, at high speeds, not stopping. I mean, those kind of things I can't design for someone not stopping at a stop sign.
Right.
But I'd like to, but I can't. So you're gonna have some, or as you mentioned, to go to the Flaherty's, we probably need to talk to them a little bit about of their curb cut. So those are the accidents you're seeing, which there's only been 2, and that is a high crash location. So that is a very significant decrease. So, I think there is ways that we probably still need to tweak that intersection. But it's become safer having that not open on the other side.
So just for context,
Yeah.
this map shows kind of the critical routes, and these traffic counts were done in 2023, so prior to the closure. So Scotty Hill Road is looking about 1,100 trips per day. And then Two Rod Road, at least this section, is 428, and I can't quite read that number.
530.
530?
Yeah.
And then Milliken, for reference, is just over 200. So that may not mean anything, but relative to other roads, it's fairly low volume. And so presumably the traffic that starts Scotty Hill Road and isn't able to continue down it, some of it, traffic is likely going on Two Rod and going on their way. Others have learned to probably stay on Route 1, take Milliken, and then do a little workaround. And I can attest, just anecdotally, my daughter lives in Milliken and traffic has picked up, not surprisingly. We also paved it a year ago, which inevitably brings traffic. So that's a sense. And what's pointed out here are the documented high crash locations that already exist, regardless, separate and apart from this discussion. So one of the improvements we could make, and frankly will need to make, regardless of what you choose to do with Scotty Hill, is improvements to this intersection and probably some section of Payne Road, just to manage the speeds. And then conveniently, this is a high crash location. I say conveniently, if you end up closing the road here, you remove one additional piece that comes into a dangerous intersection. Frankly, you kind of solve the traffic de facto. So we can come back to this. I don't want to get hung up on it, but when we're talking about other mitigation, it's these kinds of things you could bolt on to this project.
That's definitely good context. I see Councillor Anderson has his hand up again.
Thanks, Corey. Yeah, just quickly, you kind of alluded to it, but I would just like more clarity. So if we were to replace the culvert with one of the 2 options, that still is a high crash location and is not safe. So would we also be at the same time making those traffic improvements to try and make it safer, or when would those come?
So you're saying if we do a culvert replacement,
Yeah,
would we do it at the same time? At this point, it's not factored into the budget estimate, but it could be part of our CIP coming forward for next year. That's what the council wants to direct us towards kind of looking at. I will say I also had a meeting with DOT and the Downs today. So they're kind of modeling things. And so I think working in partnership to try to figure out what makes the most sense and where they're sending traffic, because it might also be increasing in the near future through there. So we want to make sure we're looking at it holistically and looking forward what's going to happen in 5-10 years rather than just today.
Though it makes sense to combine the 2 while we're there, let's get all of it done. I think what that will do is exponentially increase the cost, not surprisingly. And that's something we really haven't designed. We've had some conceptual discussions around how to solve the traffic problem. But none of them are simple or cheap. And they do affect private property. The front parking lot of Flaherty's is right at that intersection. And so there's a lot of considerations.
And we've had conversations about how the Flaherty's move through that intersection, so they were a little hesitant about kind of
Right.
changing configuration through that intersection, but so we'd have to work with them to make sure kind of, they can make the maneuvering with their equipment,
Large
things like
equipment.
that.
Yeah. I would just ask Angela, from your expert opinion, given the concerns that I think Councilor Shoup made, if we did have a bypass and did not have the culvert at Scotto Hill anymore, would that be safer or less safer than what we have today?
And you're saying where it comes out to, like, say, Payne Road? Or
Yeah,
the bypass?
I'm just trying to think of like safety. If safety is really
Yeah.
important,
Mhm.
looking at these options, like what is the safest option for our residents? Is it fixing the culvert and making the safety improvements at that intersection, or would it be retiring that intersection and then making a new intersection that could also maybe not be super safe?
It's hard to say depending on how much you guys fund, because I feel like you could have the bypass and do the additional kind of measures along Payne Road. I think have to happen eventually anyway. It's a matter of when they happen and can they happen with that. So I guess I don't know exactly how to answer that. I think, as Tom mentioned, it does eliminate one of our high crash locations really in that corridor. So you're kind of, I think if you do it right, it wouldn't be a safety concern. And that's why on that map too, that we just showed, we'd also put in some like traffic calming, which also is helping with safety in those key locations, so that you don't necessarily have to do the bypass. You can actually say, take that money and invest in kind of traffic calming through the whole corridor, and those detour routes. So there's so many options that to say, that's why you guys have the hard decision.
Yeah, we don't know the cost of fixing that intersection. But I can say that there is a cost avoidance by the removal option. I don't know what the dollar order of magnitude is, but it essentially removes that safety hazard.
Okay, I'm gonna pull this back up.
Anybody else want to put Angela on the spot?
Okay, so, no, it'll go away in a second.
Okay.
So the next is talking about, where was I? Yeah. This.
I think we kind of worked all the way through these.
It
Yep.
did, yeah, I was gonna say.
We jumped to the map.
It's just looking at, kind of that estimate and how you use, say, the $3,000, which could be plus, it could be double that, depending on how much we want to kind of invest in that corridor. And as Tom mentioned, I think regardless of our option, whether you do a replacement and that opens back up, whether you do a restoration project, I'm still gonna be coming to you and saying, here's all the things we need to do to Payne Road, in this area, so. And then, do you want to go through the summary?
So let me see if I can kind of pull it all together for you. We have a summary slide here. So again, the two options: cover replacement, cover removal. Under the replacement, you have the minimal replacement approach. That's about 1.25 million. Importantly, that's all local money. That's not eligible for grant funding. From a time point of view, that could start as soon as November, this fall, when the regulations allow. To do so, we would really have to move and push hard to get design done. I would think a better estimate might be spring 27, but optimistically, I could say that would be the earliest we could possibly get something done is this late fall.
And the other unknown, the timing for that is permitting. So we don't know how long it would take to get through, because at that point, it's
Right.
through federal permitting.
So I don't want to overpromise,
Yeah.
but that would be the bare minimum and fastest. The other option for cover replacement is, of course, the resilient approach. That has a much higher price tag, but it also has the potential for a sizable grant to defray a fair amount of it. There is risk in that, as we mentioned earlier, we have not yet applied for that. We don't have that in hand. We think we have a good chance, but there's risk associated with the unknown. Importantly, that one, we know for sure would not happen until November 27th. So there's a longer timeline to consider here, and closure in the meantime, of course.
And it's just more so that we would miss the April deadline. It's not that November, it would take us until November to get started. It's by the time we get, say that funding, and then we've missed that April deadline, so we're waiting till the following.
There's some things we could do to, and we, with your budget approval, we could do to kind of advance design to get ahead of things in permitting. Again, we're investing in putting all of our eggs in the basket of getting that grant award, but that's one way to kind of get things in place. And when the money comes, we can move as quickly as the regulations allow.
But then we couldn't get reimbursed for the design if we do it ahead of the grant.
I'm anticipating Councilor Anderson asking that question.
Sorry,
And then the other approach is the culvert removal and stream restoration. Not surprisingly, it's a lower cost because it's simpler in many respects. About 2/3 of it is covered by the grant. Local cost about $325,000. In my mind, it's not all the turnaround cost, but that's that certainly would be a local cost, just for our vehicles, plow vehicles, and emergency vehicles to be able to turn, but also the general public that finds its way at the end of not a through street. That's a critical piece. And as was mentioned, we can talk about things on top of that, beyond solving the current problem, to help address some of the existing problems and anticipated problems that might exist.
And if we head in, say, that direction, if we get your guidance, we can start looking at putting things in place for the FY27 to present some options.
Right. So we've kind of posed 3 basic questions, and this might be the good, point for you to have some discussion around them. So the basic threshold question is, which path do you want to take, replacement or removal? And then, of course, depending on what that decision is, replacement, is it the minimal design or the resilient design you'd like to approach? And then with respect to the removal and restoration, stream restoration, it's whether you want to do anything over and above that, kind of the traffic mitigation sorts of things. And as Angela said, I see kind of the timeline. I don't want to rush this decision. I think it's a super important one. You're going to need to get public input. But depending on which choice you take, I think we need to be prepared through the budget process to secure the local funding to actually execute the plan. So we've got a couple of months, frankly, before I need to make that. And the council actually has a little time beyond that if you wish to extend it. By middle of May, I think, is when you need to make final budget decisions. So that's kind of the outside timeline. So with that, we turn it back to you and are available to help answer questions.
Great, thank you. And if possible, I'd like to try to allow a few minutes for public comment. We have a large group of people here who are very interested in this, have been waiting for quite a while to speak their minds and to learn more about this. So if folks have any other questions, or if you want to offer at least initial reactions on these questions. Again, nothing's binding here. We're not having a vote, but just to kind of help advance the process.
I had a couple quick questions. I was just, when we raise Route 1 with the DOT, will Milliken Road still be accessible off of Route 1?
Yes.
Okay. And then I know that you said with the MIF, we have other roads that aren't in critical, but I don't know if there are more thoroughfare roads that we would maybe want to apply for that fund that have higher traffic counts that maybe are not in such a dire need, but we might be in a situation where like we really should be applying for that road, even though this is an emergency. And I don't know if that's
The other one that comes to mind that's been discussed, although we're not maybe ready, to wrap our head around, would be Bayview has been also a topic of conversation through the vulnerability assessment. And that was also a pilot project, and looking at what DEP would allow for permitting through there, what we could do to help with the erosion issues out at Higgins. And so I believe this grant, would be eligible for kind of like moving that forward.
Yeah, if you choose not to
But that's
pursue
something
that,
that's really
we,
been talked about, I
we
think.
would pivot, and I'm not sure exactly what criteria we, unfortunately, we're not, in some, Scott Hill's a good example, we're kind of crisis mode or responding to a situation. We don't have the luxury in that case to kind of add some forethought. I think we would come up with a criteria and identify a handful of projects that would be worthy and certainly apply for them.
I mean, I guess I definitely don't like the alternative route. I guess I just don't like that. So for me, like, if we were gonna close it, I would want, I don't like that scenario. I know I'm the liaison to the Conservation Commission, but when we think about complete streets, I think we're kind of contradicting ourselves. I do have concerns about closing that road with the changes to DOT, to Route 1 coming down the road, I guess. So I would love to, I think, just off the first bat, apply for that MAIF and try to go that route. That would be my,
So that's the resilient
Yes.
design. Yep.
Scott?
Yeah, one point, I don't think we almost touched on it, but if we remove it and restore it back to nature, and even if we do a cut through, whatever, or we just do nothing, we really have to address the Payne Road culvert. And if we replace this culvert, that gives us a way of diverting traffic when we do that. Because if the Payne one fails right now, we're in a major crisis. What are you gonna do? So if we replace this one and get Scotto Hill running, then Scotto Hill can be used to go around while we're doing the culvert on the Payne Road, because it is going to have to be done. And I don't think you'll be able to keep traffic open to do it. I don't know. And sometimes they keep one lane open to do it, but I think with culverts, I don't think you'll be able to. It'll have to be completely shut down. And if we don't have the Scotto Hill and you gotta shut down Payne Road, we're gonna be in a major problem. So I think that right there, for me, says we almost have to keep the Scotto Hill Road open and not even have my idea was, originally I thought of it, and you guys already had, but for a cut through. But if you have the cut through above the culvert on Payne Road, it does you no good,
Good
So I think we gotta bite the bullet. It seems like to me, the larger culvert that will take care of the problem is actually less money for us if we can get the grant. But that's a big if.
No.
If we can't get the grant, I guess then we could go back to the smaller culvert and maybe, try and enhance that a little bit to make it a little bit better than what it is. But,
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Larry?
Yeah, and so I just wanted to check some numbers that these just weren't put all together. If we remove and restore, it'd be 884 minus the grant of 322. Then if we use the option for the bypass, that's estimated at another 300.
Could be as high as 500 if you do bypass and some other stuff.
Right, so, but altogether it's like 900, right?
Yeah, I think, so the grant's 562, so local funds would be 322. Just want to be clear on
That's
that.
without any optional
Yep.
measures.
And then the bypass figure was about 300,
Yep.
right? So that's, I think I'm counting that 300 twice. So that would be like 600 for that option to restore it. You'd have the bypass, which might address some, I understand what you're saying about where it is in relation to Payne, but might address some of the local concern about closing the road. And my other question is if we say we want to wait for the resilient job at 3.9 and $3 million grant, and obviously the road's then closed for much longer. If we don't get that grant, is there any reason we wouldn't be eligible to go back to the resilient or road closure option? Meaning, are we giving anything up by waiting that longer time to get the grant money?
I'm trying to figure out timing wise. So if we wait to see, so waiting until August to know whether or not we got the grant essentially. I don't, did you, maybe I'm gonna ask Jake, I'm gonna phone a friend. Because, we have talked to, the grant, the MNRC grant folks and talked about kind of the process that we need to go through. And they seem comfortable with that, but, do you think August is too far out, or would they be amenable to that?
I think we would want to have a conversation with them. My gut tells me that that is too far out in the future because they will have started their grant process for 2026. And so they'll want to know how much money they have available for that funding round. So I think they're going to want some indication from us this spring for how we're going to proceed.
But we'll pose the question, what is kind of the latest date
Yeah.
that we need to accept to make a decision? Yep.
Thank you for the questions. Anyone else? Sure.
I like what Scott said, and I guess another consideration for me would be the disruption just to people, to traffic, to, travelers. And if you're gonna do it all at once and the present value money is gonna be less than if we, kick the can down the road on some of it. But I also just think about how busy Payne Road is in that area and just, blocking it off twice or having to detour, I think is not a financial consideration, but I think it's certainly a lifestyle and a frustration filter.
So are you saying if we did, the culvert replacement and the improvements at that intersection, or you think
Yeah.
the two culvert? Okay.
I think costing it out, but I just think about, instead of doing a, short fix and then waiting a few years and doing it again, and it just feels like in some ways Band-Aids.
And I will say, there is advantage, for a contractor getting there and work where it's totally shut down. That's rare that someone can get in there with the road closed like that. That I would think that the construction elements would go very quickly because they don't have anything encumbering them from kind of moving as quickly as possible. So I would think that construction window would be a pretty short duration, and then working from that side, let's say, into the intersection. So I would think, although obviously there's impact today with the road closed, I would think it would be minimal additional impact of, because they could come at it from that side.
Thanks. Bill?
Have you ruminated on what the favored strategy is, you and Tom at all, that you could give us kind of some prioritization?
I guess the only thing I would weigh in on is I think, a minimal culvert is extremely short-sighted. And that if we put it in, I'm afraid that within 5 or 10 years, we're replacing that culvert. So I would not recommend the minimum culvert replacement. Beyond that, I think a resilient culvert or the restoration is a better option for kind of what we
Okay.
need to do. And then from there, if you go restoration, it can spiral out with all kinds of things we can look at for improvements through the network, right?
Okay.
Yeah, I don't have a
You know,
specific recommendation. I'm
Yeah.
just struck with how much investment that we'll need to be making over the next decades and wanting to be smart about and opportunistic to use maybe unique alternative options when it makes sense, because it won't in most cases, frankly.
One more quick thing.
Okay.
On that note, I think the cheaper kind of quick fix is the way to go. Just because we can get that throughway done and still can we still go for the grant for the real big fix for Payne Road? In other
It's
words,
not eligible.
It's
Sorry, not
Payne
for
Road-
that.
Payne Road isn't eligible. Oh, okay. I was gonna say, just go for the quick fix, get that grant and do the Payne Road.
Originally, part of, one of the options we were looking at is can we do both culverts at the same time, doing Scotto Hill and Payne Road? And so that's where it came into play that, and even doing the design, thinking, can we design both culverts and say, do the construction for Scotto Hill Road? And then we can like plan ahead through our CIP process. But unfortunately, it's a state aid road, so it's not eligible for these funds.
Yeah, because it sounds like we gotta get on top of it, because
Yeah.
we can't wait until there's a failure
Yeah.
This is not a good idea. We really need to get on top of it.
And there were two others down the road on Payne Road that flood out more regularly. So those are all together, probably looking at doing the three together, I'm sure. Yeah.
All right, we'll throw it back to John.
I'm leaning more towards the resilient grant. But if we were to go that path, I would hope that we could still partner with the owner of the land nearby to have that bypass, because I don't like that it's going to be 2 years essentially to fix it. It seems like if we're waiting till November 2027 at the earliest. And so it would be nice to still be able to have in that 2 year time period, the ability for people to use that as a detour if they needed to. So I don't know if that option would still be on the table. But I feel like Angela, you said, the replacing it with the smaller culvert just doesn't seem like a good use of money, knowing that it's gonna, fail relatively soon. And so that's kind of where I'm leaning at this point. But again, if we can find a way, because what I worry about for residents, going back to what Michelle was saying, like now we're 2 years out before there's a way to use that road, and that just seems like a long time. So if there's any creative things we can do to help move traffic and in the interim, that would be great.
Thanks, John. Yeah, and I get the benefit of going last, but I generally agree with Councillor Anderson and others who've supported the resilient replacement option. And I appreciate Angela's response and candor on kind of the potential short versus long-term trade-off in terms of cost and disruption, by the way. And as I just think about our road network in Scarborough, we already have these inherent challenges because we have the marsh and we have all these crossings, and I feel like any road connection that allows people to connect from one part of town to another is critical. And as it is, it already takes 25 minutes to get from Pine Point to Black Point. Just for one of many examples. So I would lean toward that. Again, I'm eager to hear more from the public as well. But I appreciate all the work that's been done on this. I know for some it may feel like nothing's happened, and there's no way to minimize the impact that it's had on people who have relied on that road. But I hope folks will understand that there has clearly been a lot of work and thought going on here, and we're constrained by seasonal factors and funding cycles and so forth. Obviously, taking that resilient path and hoping for the grant would be a little bit of a leap of faith and a calculated risk, but it may be something that we determine is appropriate. But with that, I would like to, we have about 10 minutes before we'll need to adjourn, so we can kind of turn over to the business meeting. I do want to open it up for public comment. Ask anyone who would like to speak to just briefly state their name and address, try to keep it to a couple minutes. And if we run out of time, we'll have more opportunities at the beginning of the regular meeting. Thank you.
Hello. Good evening, Chair Fellows, councilors, and staff. My name is Tim Hampton, and I live on the west side of Scarborough. I appreciate the work that has gone into evaluating options for Scotto Hill Road, but I want to be very direct. Waiting another full year is not acceptable. This road has been closed since May 2025, and the west side residents were told last year that the repairs would begin in November. That timeline has shifted to spring, and now we're being told next year, or potentially 2027. Each delay has real consequences for the people who live here. The detours are now a daily failure point. Homes in Payne and Muzzy, and Gorham back up every morning. What used to be a 10-minute trip is now routinely 20 to 30 minutes, often spilling onto Route 1. This is no longer a temporary inconvenience. It is a sustained breakdown in basic connectivity. I understand the environmental constraints and I understand the regulatory construction window runs from November to early April. That is exactly why I'm asking you not to accept the plan that effectively pushes this out another full year. Missing the next window means accepting this closure through 2027. I also want to address the funding argument directly. The town has stated in the fiscal 2026 budget that Scarborough is in one of the strongest financial positions it has been in for many years. Unassigned fund balance increased to approximately $15.9 million, about 14.5% of the prior year operating expenses, well above the town's minimum policy threshold. This gives the town flexibility to respond to the urgent infrastructure failures like this one. So my ask tonight is simple. First, please remove the permanent closure of default outcome. Eliminating an existing road connection while growth continues contradicts the town's transportation goals and the council's stated concerns about growth outpacing infrastructure. Second, please commit to funding and acting now. Whether the solution is a culvert replacement or a new alignment that preserves mobility, the town should authorize design, permitting, and procurement immediately so we can begin in the next regulatory window, not the one after that. This is a failure of existing infrastructure, not a new discretionary project. Treating it as something that must wait for 2027 sends a message that prolonged disruption is acceptable for West Side residents. It is not. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you.
Trustee Mauer, 20 Meeting House Road. I just want to appreciate the discussion. It's a very complicated and difficult issue. And I want to recognize the residents who are impacted by this. This is, a very difficult issue. But I do want to say, as a member of the Conservation Commission, that we supported the idea of the removal of the culvert and reconnecting the marsh. Couple of thoughts. A bird in hand is worth more than two in the bush. We have the opportunity for this grant, and there are some additional, so we could begin addressing some of these problems with some workarounds, a cut through, and some traffic calming, and create space for this marsh to reconnect with Beaver Brook. I hate to throw away $1.2 million for a quick fix when this is going to be an undersized culvert, and where it's either going to be destroyed by storms and water flows. So I just don't think it's worth us throwing away $1.2 million to get a quick fix. I think that's just a waste of money. It's fiscally not smart. We could, we are likely to get that grant for the wider culvert. But if we don't get it, we are then back to square one. So I think that, fiscally, to me, it makes more sense to go with a cheaper option with the removal of the culvert and to look for workarounds, increase our traffic safety. I just think that that's a better option. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Good evening. I am Job Duty. I live at 90 Beach Ridge Road. This has been a great discussion. My position is that I think Scotty Hill Road needs to be repaired in some way, shape, or form. I personally have traveled the road for 51 years. I remember when the lower section was unpaved. I remember when the Boy Scouts used it to run their, soapbox derbies down in the 80s. For my family, it's, that's, and for everyone else on the Beach Ridge corridor, that is how we get to the center of town. That's how I would travel between my grandparents' place and my mother's place on Spurnick Road. Um, so, for a lot of us, it's like that is part of the Beech Ridge corridor, and that is, that's Scotty Hill Road is an extension of that road. As far as to what solution to repair the road, I am, fairly, uh, I'm flexible in that regard. Prior to the discussion today of, possibly using that road as a backup, repair it and using it as a backup road, prior, in case there were other culverts failure, I would say, consider, removing the culverts and putting in a one-lane timber bridge. I mean, you could possibly, put something a little more, more rustic there, something more in fitting with the Flaherty's farm stand, which itself looks a lot like a covered bridge. As far as the alternatives that I've driven the last 7 months or so, making a left-hand turn onto Payne Road from Two Rod Road is dangerous, as well as making a left-hand road from Milliken Road is dangerous. So in order for me to get home from that side of town, I typically would go a roundabout way to get home. As far as the extension of putting adding a public road through that proposed development, yeah, I might be open to that, but would be concerned about the visibility and traffic, coming down that road in that direction. But I just ask you, thanks for, your time and working through this problem, and just, please pick a solution that, restores Scotty Hill Road to Beech Ridge Road. All right, thank you.
Thank you. This time we've got less than 10 minutes before our 7 o'clock meeting, so I'm going to go ahead and wrap up this workshop. Anyone who still wishes to speak about Scotto Hill Road, I hope you'll do so at the beginning of our general public comment period, which is toward the beginning of the meeting. And just ask that there's, if possible, it's up to you, but defer to those who want to speak on Scotto Hill, since they've been sitting here for an hour and a half. I do appreciate all the feedback that we've gotten, all the work and responses from staff, and all the great questions from the council. So to be continued. Thank you.
Thank you.
This is hard to understand what the best of.
Good evening and welcome to the Scarborough Town Council meeting for February 4th, 2026. Would you please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Tony, could you please call the roll?
Here. Here.
Here. Counselor Donovan?
Here.
Counselor Anderson?
Here.
Hayes? Here.
Here. Thank you. So we do have a full council this evening. Just as a point of order and kind of a housekeeping note, with Councilor Anderson participating remotely due to work travel, we will need to do roll call votes instead of shows of hands when we do have votes this evening. With that, we will move on to general public comments. Again, this is, as usual, this is for items that are not on our agenda for this evening. We did just wrap up a workshop on Scuttle Hill Road closure or reopening options. We took some public comment at the end of that. We sort of ran out of time, so I want to offer for those who are still here from that, you could certainly come up to the podium. Anyone else with public comment, please just give your name and address, limit your comments to no more than 3 minutes. And then I do, based on a couple of unfortunate comments that we got at the last meeting, I did want to take a moment here to just recite a couple of our rules of decorum. And this is really, I don't expect any issues from anybody in the room here tonight, but we had a couple of remote participants last time who had some disruptive things to say. And so I just want to sort of reiterate this. This is all from Chapter 302, the Town Council Rules and Policies, Section 202.3.A. Persons addressing the council shall direct their remarks exclusively to the council chair. Persons will strive to be accurate in their statements and avoid making comments that are obscene, threatening, or disruptive. All statements shall respect the dignity and seriousness of the proceeding. And 202.3.B, it shall be at the discretion of the council chair to ask any persons violating the expectation outlined in the above to cease such action or risk being asked to be seated or removed. So thanks for bearing with me on that. And with that, I will open it up to general public comment.
Darlene Durant Harden. I live at Milky Way, which is on Beechwood Road. Scott and I went to school together. We're Redskins. One of the things I talked about, people don't realize our side of town, we have no water. So when there's a fire, which they've never saved a house on our side of town, every fire department comes. The closest and fastest for Oak Hill to get to my house is Scotto Hill Road. It's straight. We think everybody comes, Dunstan comes, County Road, but you have to understand they all have to come because we don't have water. So that's a huge thing that people don't understand, that we have wells where we are. The other thing is I work at Dunstan Dental, 37 years, I'm a Dunstan girl. With flooding, for me to get home sometimes, I've had very much issues. I'm really concerned about Route 1. My patients won't be able to get to me. That's a whole nother issue. But I've had to go before Broad Turn's been closed, Route 1's been closed, by Cabela's and Payne Road and Higas Parkway floods. Sometimes that's the only way I can get home. And people who haven't lived here for a long time don't understand big storms. This is a real winter we're having. For Hurricane Bob, I couldn't get to work for 3 days because everything flooded around Beechwood Road. So it's just another concern that people understand. I do feel a little slighted. They said we don't use, that's not a lot of traffic. There's a lot of us out there and a lot of us old Scarborough out there. And that's where they're building on top of that. Payne Road is a disaster. We're having all these issues. Now we're going to have all this stuff with the downs, and we're going to have all these out. We have FedEx now on Holmes Road. That's a whole nother issue. People don't understand that we need a way to get to Route 1. And next, my neighbor had surgery, open heart surgery on Monday. I'm going to yield to him because I need to get him home. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, Darlene thought I was crazy,
Yes.
but this was a serious enough issue for me. I grew up on the corner of Holmes Road and my name's Ron Grondin. I live at 115 Beech Ridge Road. I grew up on Holmes Road and my wife over in Prouts Neck. We live just a short distance up above Dresser Road, so that road's vital to us. We have animals, so we spend a lot of time at Tractor Supply. You know, I do other things up on Route 1, whether it's to go to my parents' business or something like that. So to close that, I don't think is an option. And some would say, well, the fish. I have seen pogies all the way. I live on the other side of Dresser Road. So if you go right across the street from my property, I've seen pogies all the way up in Beaver Brook. My children had fished Beaver Brook at Beech Ridge Road. So, you know, you talk about that culvert, well, you got the culverts right next door on Payne Road, 75 feet away maybe. You have the 6 lanes of traffic going onto the main turnpike. You also have another culvert that goes underneath at Beech Ridge Road, just the other side of West Beech Ridge Road. I'm not sure about anything beyond that, but again, I think it's important. I think we need to do the resilient to take a look at that. I think it's definitely, we need to do something that is going to last. But I do hope that we fight to keep this road open, and I thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Tammy Mittman. I live on Beech Ridge Road, and I was speaking to Mr. Doherty during the break. I just want to say I encourage you, whenever you're talking about anything like this, to get emergency management involved. Make sure you know what the fire chief thinks about not only what you're going to do, but the sequence of what you're going to do. I'm sure that he will have insights to offer as to the safest, factors that you might not think about. I remember living in one place where a bridge was closed to be replaced and nobody had asked the fire chief, the fire people around, and there was no way for them to easily get to the homes on the other side. There was a sequencing process that could have happened that would have made it much safer. So I would ask you to always get them involved.
Mhm.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Good evening, Katie Foley, 7 Acorn Lane. Also the chair of the Dog Owners of Greater Scarborough Political Action Committee. Oh, wow. I can't honestly believe I'm standing here tonight, or that I have to be standing here tonight. And the fact that I am before you once again on the same issue that we spent 8, 9 months discussing last year should be disappointing to you. I know it's more than disappointing to me. So despite robust council conversation and discussion and consensus from what I could gather at the goal setting workshop, and despite 73% of the residents telling you that the animal control ordinance is working very well as a great compromise, and in fact, 13% of those folks wanted more access, 13% less access, but an overwhelming 73%. We are taking it upon ourselves to reach out to the Maine Department of Inland Fisheries and Wildlife and sharing incomplete data sets with them, which I'm going to speak to, and I have some handouts for you as well. How in the world? I sent out a great message at the holidays to the dogs group, good year ahead, 1 year to breathe. It'll always come back, we know that. But we're moving forward after 8, 9 months of discussion and heartache. And here we are again. It just feels like a complete and utter disregard for the citizens that you're elected to serve. And I don't know how you expect to establish trust after something like the fiasco of last year and then now this. I'm never going to get through all the things I want to say, but this is probably the most important thing. And many of you may or may not know, some of you may know this. I know Tom and I had conversations about this. Many in the dogs group last summer wanted to enact what I call a nuclear option, which is to recall counselors. Having been involved in what it takes to put a petition on the ballot, all of those pieces, to me, and the actions at the time, honestly, I didn't feel warranted it. I worked very hard behind the scenes to make sure that that did not happen, because I love this town. I love the Democrats in this town. I love the Republicans in this town. I love the fishermen. I love the lawyers, the accountants, the workers, the beachfront, the West Scarborough. The last thing I want to see us do in a world that we're living in right now is tear this town apart. And that's what this issue is going to do. And that's what us reaching out, tattling on the town, and saying we're violating the beach management agreement. It's just utter chaos and creates a problem that we shouldn't have. I have 12 seconds left. I have one very, very important point to make, and then I'm going to give you my handouts. This is the summary. I believe that was shared at the council workshop. It was also shared with the Maine Department in Inland Fisheries and Wildlife, Brad and Laura Zitsky, who are lovely people, by the way. Don't blame them one bit. They have a very different mission than I do in life, but that's okay. They're as passionate about theirs as I am about mine. But if you just look at this, before I send this off to a federal agency, anyone here, can anyone add 71 plus 34? It equals 105. But at the bottom, it says 172. Okay, that's just a quick glance. That was my first glance at this page. I'm like, wait a minute. Then I just started diving into the raw data and all kinds of numbers, which you're going to get a copy of. But if we're going to reach out to a federal agency, please make sure that we're at least sending them a data set that's actually complete and makes sense. You know how I feel. We'll see where this goes. I don't want to tear this town apart, but I also don't know if I'm going to be able to hold people back at this point. They're pretty upset.
Thank you.
I'll just take one and pass it down.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, and then there's extra for Liam and.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Suzanne Foley Ferguson, 331 Black Point Road. And I'm speaking regarding dogs on the beach as well. And I'm not going to summarize everything that you get in writing that my sister just handed you, but I'm going to tell you that I agree with Brad Zitsky that I'm also appalled with this data. But I'm appalled for a whole different reason. This is not scientific, Hans. I hate to say it. And it's not scientific for a number of different reasons. And the claims of non-compliance with beach management agreement are unsupported. And although you don't have a letter in front of you, I want you to keep that behind in your head. The summary, it leaps from observation to violation to ordinance failure. And you guys could make a motion today to say that, you know, we decided we weren't going to revisit this issue in 2026, and we're not going to. And that's uncommon for you to do that without something on the table. But it's also not common for a town councilor to send unsolicited data to a federal agency that could call for fines on this town and could cause a lawsuit on this town. So that's pretty unprecedented as well. And especially on a topic that the council already decided that they agreed that they weren't going to deal with this year. The data is pretty bad. I only have a minute left. And what I will say is, you know, a friend of mine had surgery today. She doesn't have children. And the first thing that I thought to say to her was, you know, you're going to be all right. You're fine. And a lot of us, when we go under the knife, we think about our family and we think about, oh, geez, am I going to come out of surgery okay? And you think of your family and your friends, right? And the one thing I thought of when I thought to say to her was, you know, think of your dog, because your dog is your family. I know you've heard this a million times, but I'm just telling you this because if you want to bring up this issue, you need to understand that this is a family issue. And it's not just about birds. It's not just about, you know, going on the beach. It's about people who love their animals like their family. And so it emits strong emotions from people. And so that's why it can be a very divisive issue. So I would just, I guess, my advice would be to tread carefully and be honest, and the data needs to be presented in a way more scientific way. And if you need help with that, I took many statistical biological classes. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Emma James, 17 Chamberlain Road. I was also here this summer and I spoke about the importance of community from the beach, particularly as a new mom, and what it means to have this community that I've met through the beach. And since then, I've had another child, very similar experience where people I've met on the beach walking my dog have been dropping off food, giving gifts. It's really very special. I think it's unique. And it's something that I wouldn't have had I not had a dog and a place to walk him every morning. And I believe one of you made a comment like, oh, I wish I had that community around my beach. I go to Higgins frequently. And so I would invite anyone here to join me on a beach walk. I emailed all of you today. I tend to go at 7:30 in the morning with my dog Larry. Great name. And I think you'll see how special it is for people in Scarborough and South Portland and Cape Elizabeth to have this really nice community. And it is frustrating when I thought this was done. I thought we had covered it. And everyone is entitled to their own opinion, but it seems overwhelmingly that the town is in support of having dogs have access to the beach. And if it means there needs to be more stricter enforcement, then I think that's what we should look into instead of taking it away altogether. And yeah, I just like to close on similar to what some of my friends have said here, that you know, dogs are like family, but as are the people that you meet on the beach. So I hope that we're able to come to a consensus and not have to bring this back over and over again. So thank you. And again, invitation stands. I've emailed all of you today.
Thank you. I think we have a couple people online. We can finish. If there's anyone else here in person, please go ahead.
Hi, I'm Sue Hamill, and I live on Bay Street in Pine Point. As you may or may not know, I have followed the school project for quite a long time. And I did send an email to the members of the town council and the Board of Ed about something that I think is very important with this $140 million project that we are starting. And I have to say, it is well underway at this moment. And I'm here to remind you all that you have the ultimate responsibility for managing and safeguarding our tax dollars and ensuring that they are spent carefully and prudently. And I'm asking you to strongly encourage the Board of Ed to hire an independent professional owner's rep, because it is a fiscally responsible way to protect the $140 million public investment and reduce the risk of costly mistakes, delays, and change orders. It has become increasingly standard practice in these multi-million-dollar construction projects to hire an independent OR. Construction projects have become more complex. Public agencies use these professionals to bridge the gap between what the internal staff, what their capabilities are, and the requirements of these big projects. As you know, this project involves demolishing and rebuilding an elementary school in phases, renovating and expanding multiple schools, and building while schools remain occupied. It is extremely complex, yet we are currently planning to move forward without an independent owner's rep. Without an OR, the architect naturally fills the vacuum, becomes the primary advisor on the budget, the scope, the pricing, change orders, and even contractor selection, while also being the firm that designs the project and benefits financially from its size and complexity. Even with complete professionalism, This is a classic conflict of interest structure. An owner's rep is not bureaucracy. It's the owner's advocate. The job is simple. Watch the money, watch the schedule, question change orders, and catch problems early. On a $140 million project, a 1% mistake equals $1.4 million. Not hiring an independent OR concentrates design, or advisory and oversight in the same firm. The structure may be convenient, but it is not optimal for protecting the public and our investment. I'm not questioning Harriman's integrity or competence. This is about good government. On a project of this scale, the best practice is to separate design from owner-side oversight. Independent checks and balances protect everyone, and most importantly, protect the taxpayer. I like to think of it about kind of similar to building a house, if you've ever done that. You hire an architect and a builder, and it's kind of exciting, and things are going great. But at some point, you realize that you and the builder are on competing teams, and you have different goals. You want the best value for the money, and the builder makes more money by building more, charging more, and extending the job. That doesn't make the builder dishonest. It's simply how the incentives work. Now multiply that by 300 for the scale of our project. So, I mean, it's crazy to think we would do this without an owner's rep. I'm not, it is the Board of Ed's decision, but releasing the bond funds to pay for the project is your decision. And I'm not suggesting that you withhold the funds. I'm simply pointing out that you do have the influence and the leverage, and I respectfully ask you to use that influence to encourage the Board of Ed to do the fiscally responsible thing and hire an owner's rep. Thanks.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right, we'll go online.
Taylor, you may talk.
Hi, my name is Taylor Ann Vaughn. I've lived here about 14 years, and I have to say I absolutely love the area for so many reasons. One issue I'm having, though, is we could really use some work on our roads. There was a study done last year where 22 sites where crashes happen often. There was quite a few of those that were to be looked at to see if maybe there was some developmental things we could do to prevent these crashes. And one thing that I've noticed watching all of these meetings is we could use more funding for things like this. At the same time, so much of our entire state is being hurt in ways that you cannot imagine. Department of Homeland Security has stated that they're doing this Operation Catch the Day. They said they're going to arrest 1,400 immigrants. And I know that as of last month, they got 206 people living in Maine. That's how many people they arrested. And from the bottom of my heart, I can just see the stuff that is happening in Minneapolis happening to us. And I think that there's something we could do, and it would also save a lot of our funding. I think that we should, as a community, come together, have a proclamation, and maybe you guys could offer ICE a cheaper and safer place to stay, as they are in our state conducting very necessary raids, taking out extremely dangerous people. At the same time, when all of it's over, not only do we have safer streets, but we have the money to fix our streets. And I just think that would be the best case for everyone. As I see online, they are being tormented as they attempt to do the jobs that they're doing. And I think that we have the available space. We need the funds that they could easily give. And I do not think it would be unreasonable for us to have just a few officers posted outside the hotels that we keep them in, so that the same things are happening in Maine where they have rioters coming to their hotels wouldn't be happening to them. I think we could offer a safe haven for brave men doing wonderful work. Thank you for letting me speak today.
Thank you. Richard?
Yes, thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak tonight. So I have 3 minutes, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So I heard earlier in the meeting tonight, you're speaking and talking about having actions that suggest this council is considering measures to censor speech, to silence voices that you might sting or offend you. Let me be clear though. You do not have the right to censor speech no matter how much it hurts your feelings, or challenges your worldview. The First Amendment isn't a suggestion, it's the backrock of our democracy. It protects even the most unfortunate truths because once you start deciding whose words are acceptable, you've opened the door for a lawsuit. History shows us that censorship doesn't protect the vulnerable, it empowers the oppressors. And I urge you, resist the urge to play speech police, uphold the Constitution, and let ideas clash in the open, free from such meddling. As we look forward to the future of our state and nation, I want to voice my support for Graham Plattner in his bid for the U.S. Senate. In a field crowded with establishment puppets, Graham is the only candidate truly committed to breaking free from the undue influences that undermine our sovereignty. He's the lone voice running to resist the overwhelming Jewish influence in our politics and stands firm.
Okay, I'm going to cut you off there. Thank you.
Will, you may speak.
Yes, am I coming through all right? Can you hear me?
Yep,
We can hear you.
Oh, okay. Can I get a clarification as to what happened to the speaker before me?
No.
Oh, so just
Do you have
your
something
guys
to share? Do you have something?
Yeah, I do actually. Yeah, I have a
Do you
speech.
have a
I have
comment?
sir, yes, I have it. Yeah, that's why I'm here, because I have a speech prepared for you. And I'm wondering if I say one word you don't like, you're going to shut me down. That's why I'm here. I wrote a speech. Can
You
I
say
get it?
something offensive or disruptive, you will be shut
That
down.
doesn't, this doesn't
Does that
matter.
answer your question?
Yeah, so it's all about what offends you? What offends you? Are you a vegan?
Thank you.
Can I talk about eating?
Anyone else? Thank you all. Moving on, item number 5, approval of the minutes from the January 21st, 2026 meeting. Do we have a motion?
Moved.
Any discussion? We will do a roll call vote. Would you mind doing that, Tony? Thank you.
Counselor Jordan?
Yes.
Counselor Kane?
Yes.
Counselor Shu?
Yes.
Counselor Donovan?
Yes.
Counselor Anderson?
Yes.
Counselor Hayes?
Yes.
Chairman Philo?
Yes,
Unanimous, thank you.
thank you. Item number 6, adjustments to the agenda. There are none. Item number 7, items to be signed, treasurer's warrants. I signed those and gave those to the assistant town manager prior to the meeting. Item number 8 is the town manager report.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll try to be brief this evening. Scott Hill Road, I think we spent 90 good minutes and interested in now with the information out there, getting further input from council and from the public. And I'll just simply publicize the event for February 12th for Council Corner Live. Hopefully that will be a good session for the town to receive public input on what those options are. With respect to legislative matters, and this is something the council's really directed me to spend a little more time with this year, and I heartily agree that it's too important not to. I want to report on 2 legislative matters. One is the so-called Fix-It Bill for 1829. It is LD 2173. There's a matter on your agenda later this evening, which is essentially testimony staff has prepared with a lot of council input and some other colleague input. There's a public hearing on this bill on February 10th at 1 p.m. And we'll sort out who actually offers the testimony. I think a number of councilors have offered that, and I think it would be really powerful, frankly, if an elected official is the one that delivers that. But if not, staff is prepared to do that. So we're tracking that very carefully. I suspect many of us have signed up to the tracking system with the legislature, and we're getting notices when hearings are scheduled. So we'll stay on top of these. I also want to report back on LD 1093. This pertains to Scarborough Beach, as it relates to us anyhow. I think it has potentially broader application, but for us, it really pertains to Scarborough Beach. This bill was going to require that all state beaches accept beach passes, I believe is the premise. The committee of record voted last week ought not to pass. And alternatively, they're suggesting some sort of local working group, and the town is named as one of the parties that will be invited to be part of that. So I'll keep you apprised of that and maybe look for one of you to, if you're interested in serving. With respect to the assessor recruitment, I'm very pleased to say we've concluded that. Chair Fellows was able to participate in the second round interviews. I'm very pleased to announce that we have extended an offer subject to council appointment to Deanne Vale. Deanne is currently the assessor in Biddeford, and previously was deputy. Prior to that, she worked for a short bit with the Maine Revenue Service and the town of Bar Harbor in the assessing field. Extremely pleased with her background, and I think you'll be duly impressed. So you could expect to see that recommendation for appointment at your February 18th meeting. At this point, we're scheduled to have her start March 9th. I did want to make mention, I did receive a communication from Brad Zitsky, one of the state biologists with Ivan W. And he, I guess, promised or suggested that he would be sending more formal comment. I've not received those, but I know how interested this council is and how interested members of our public are generally on this topic, and wanted to make sure that I just mentioned that I received this. What the actual specifics of that will be remain to be seen, and therefore what action, if any, remains to be seen. So I'll keep you advised as this moves forward. Also want to admit fault. I brought to you last month a suggestion that we bring back snowmobile registration fees and no longer send those to the Saco Pathfinder Snowmobile Club. I think you were presented with some public comment at your last meeting. I've since had a very detailed meeting with the club president, and now realize that they do in fact continue to maintain trails, including bridges in this town. And at the end of the day, we're talking about $2,800. It's not much to us, and it's not going to make or break our budget. To them, it's 17% of their budget. So it's very meaningful. And so I will be bringing back an action for us to put back in place that directive to send snowmobile registrations to them. With respect to the Peterson Field Lighting Project, this is something I've tried to keep you apprised of. It has moved through the planning board process, receiving advisory opinion. There's been further modifications to the design to meet some of the needs and questions and concerns expressed there. Community services staff, I will give them all the credit. They have, I think, really gone over and above communicating out to abutters and known interested parties in terms of where we are and doing our level best to accommodate their needs. Going forward, we are moving forward with the project. In fact, today they started to mobilize equipment, and I think as soon as tomorrow, some of the bases of the poles will be, some work will be done, and poles will be delivered in March. So the intent is to have these in place and the fields playable as soon as weather permits this spring. Importantly, we continue to work very closely with Scarborough Little League in putting in place very clear protocols in terms of how we're going to operate this, hours and noise. And these are the things that I think will have the most direct impact on the butters. And we fully appreciate, as we said at the outset, we want to be good neighbors, and that is our goal. So we will do our level best. I want to remind the community that Project Grace is doing its annual fuel rally. That's this weekend, February 7th, 10 to noon at the library. So please do what you can to help. This year in particular has been a challenge for all of us, heating our homes. Two things not on the agenda I just wanted to bring to your attention. The Sawyer Street matter that was concluded last fall, there is a lingering question around imposing a weight limit. I think that's something that there was general interest in the part of both towns. We do expect to bring forward a proposal that's coordinated through Cape Elizabeth. We, for our purposes, are working on a larger wholesale change of our traffic ordinance, and we'd like to hold it just a month or so until we can have those things catch up and just be efficient with the ordinance committee's time. So we're on track for probably a March matter before you at this point, and I don't think any harm will be done in the meantime. And lastly, I just want to mention that the software that we're using to manage our agendas and information for council's benefit and also for the public, we're still with the same company. The look and the feel of that will be slightly different starting as soon as next week for standing committees. I think we have finance and ordinance next week. And then for council at your next meeting on the 18th, things will look different. I think you'll be able to pick it up pretty quickly, but I didn't want you to be surprised when you see things come across slightly differently. And lastly, not a great subject, but second half tax bills will be going out shortly. The communications committee has been interested and will again be having an insert. It's a one-page, two-sided insert that has relevant, helpful information. Of course, given the nature of the mailing, it's not kind of very timely. It needs to be information that's of general interest, but not very specific. So very pleased with the content we've been able to put together for that. And that's the extent of my report.
Thanks, Tom. Any council questions or comments on the town manager's report?
I just,
Michelle?
one comment, just, I was very impressed when the Saco Pathfinders group came and spoke last time, and there were a number of young adults, teenagers, young adults that spoke about just the impact that it had on their lives. And the fact that we, is that on? Oh, and the fact that we, I think, listened well and really did the follow-up, and Tom had that meeting, and to see that us reverse our decision, I think was really the right thing to do, but also a powerful thing to do. So I just encourage people to come and speak because information really does matter. And I think people sharing how decisions that we make impacts their personal lives is certainly important.
Right. It was a good reminder for me. We often think our decisions are simple and not impactful, and reminder to take the extra effort and make the call before. So I apologize for that, and we'll make good on it.
Thanks. Councilor Anderson, online?
Yep. I just have to ask for the chair and the vice chair for when you guys set the next agenda. Assuming we get this memo from the state agency or the federal agency, I think it would be good for us to have a conversation of the contents of those as a body before we send it to any committee for any sort of formal action. So I just would like you guys to consider that request when we get the memo and set the next agenda.
Thanks. And I'll just briefly add on that topic. As was noted, we can sometimes be a little bit awkward when we have items that are understandably attracting a lot of attention from the public, but we don't have an action item on our agenda. And it is pretty extraordinary for something to be brought up when it hasn't been advertised in advance. My personal feeling is that it's most prudent to wait until we have something in front of us to which we can respond or digest. So we will certainly look to that and we'll proceed deliberately. Thanks. Anything else? Larry?
Yeah, maybe I should just wait to general council comment, but I can come back to what you're speaking to also.
Okay, thank you. Okay, then. Thank you. Moving on. Standing and special committee reports and liaison reports. We start down here with you, Michelle.
Sure. I will be, I know Corey, Larry, and Scott, I think, are on the Rules and Policy Committee, which I chair, and I have a few items that we're ready to discuss. I'll be reaching out to you folks to set up a first meeting on that. The second thing, John may talk to the Communications Committee, but last night we did have our first conversations with counselors at Pleasant Hill School, and Scott joined me and Bill Donovan, and we had some good conversation there. We do, if you weren't able to make it to that meeting, we have 6 other meetings coming up, and they're throughout town. Once again, we're even offering one on a Saturday at the Public Safety Building. So we took a lot of feedback from the groups the folks that attended last time. We tried to make changes to I guess, work with people's schedules to try to get people there. So we're doing different nights of the week, weekends, and different times. So that information is really valuable. And the people that came last November, December to those meetings, we already have taken some of that information and made some changes. So keep coming and keep talking.
Great, thank you. John, we'll go in the order in which you would normally be sitting, if you don't mind.
Yeah, just to build on what Michelle said, so our next conversation with counselor is this Thursday at the Community Services Hub from 6 to 7:30. And then we have our first virtual only one. So this one will be online virtual only on Monday from 5 o'clock to 6:30. And then next Tuesday, we will be at Blue Point School from 6:30 to 8 p.m. on the 10th. And then we have our Counselor Corner Live for Scotto Hill Road on the 12th from 6:30 to 8. So a lot of opportunities for people to engage. That's all I have.
Thanks. Bill?
The Housing Alliance Committee met last week, took up the legislation that we're familiar with, 1829, affirmed support for the town council's objections to that legislation. The Burnham Apartments was discussed. It was noted with favor the advancement of the proposed 24 units to the planning board, that it responds to workforce housing needs. 37 Mill Commons was discussed. This was in the context of entertaining a request from a private citizen to allow rentals of owners with low-income housing that presently does not permit renting. The Alliance thought renting to someone who meets the income requirements of low-income housing might allow for that to be a permitted use, and that would come back to us to authorize that. The Housing Alliance is looking for a housing assessment, developing an RFQ to select a consultant to evaluate issues surrounding Scarborough's low income and workforce housing. So more to come on that.
Great, thanks, Bill. Karen?
Thank you. So we have the ordinance committee meeting next Wednesday at 5. And the ordinance committee, I think the biggest agenda item that we have coming before us is the first draft of the short-term rental ordinance. So we'll be addressing that. And then the traffic safety group is going to bring some updates to the traffic ordinance. So we're going to work through that, as well as I think a couple tweaks to the cannabis ordinance are going to be discussed as we discussed during our goal setting session. Thanks.
Thanks. Larry?
Thanks. For finance, we meet next week. Our previous meeting, I had mentioned that the school impact fee proposal would be coming before us tonight, and that got pushed back till the 18th just for some administrative reasons. And for Chamber of Commerce, we had a great meeting this week with really wonderful appreciation and acceptance of the reduced municipal fees that we all spoke to last week, which will be up for second reading, maybe also on the 18th, I'm not sure. But they really had a good response to that. Paul Beaver, the chairman of the chamber, had made it one of his first priorities to work on that. And so he was really excited about that change. And I really have to thank Kristen and Autumn and the staff for taking in that input, really putting together a pretty robust amount of changes and lowering of municipal fees. And I just thought it was a great example of town government listening to the community, the business community, and enacting positive outcomes. It was really good. And the school has their next monthly meeting, school project has their next monthly meeting on February 10th, and they're just kind of getting going with organization structure and all. But there are some significant decisions to be made relatively quickly just to get the organization of the whole project moving forward.
Great. Thanks. Scott?
Yeah, we just had the meeting at Pleasant Hill, and half the people there, surprised, thought that LD 1829 would probably be a good thing in the most part. there's some parts of it, obviously, it isn't good for Scarborough, and hopefully we can get that cleaned up, but, they seem to be, in favor of, ADUs and relaxing it more for people. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't have a lot to report. Long Range Planning Committee, which I'm liaison, reconvenes this coming Friday, the 6th at 8:00 a.m. I'm looking forward to getting back into the conversations with counselors starting on Monday. And I've been invited to join the Kiwanis Club for one of their regular meetings. It's tentatively scheduled for a week from Friday, the 13th, so I look forward to that. Moving on.
Well, what,
Sure, do you have something else, Bill?
yeah, one thing, Manager Hall informed me that, one of the people who was nominated as a part of the process we went through last meeting, has, declined, and so, Town Manager Hall can explain the situation.
Right.
Okay.
When the matter comes up on your agenda, I'm pleased to propose a recommendation, amendment for your consideration.
Right. And we do have an action item on nominations, so thank you.
Thank you.
Great. No resolutions or proclamations at this time. Moving on to public hearings. Order number 26-006, 7 p.m. public hearing and second reading on the proposed amendments to Chapter 1019, Manufactured Housing Community Ordinance with regards to LD 949. Jody?
Sure. On behalf of the clerk's office, they're recommending that the changes made the legislature, it prohibits municipalities from requiring charging a license fee, but it doesn't prohibit them from licensing the communities. Therefore, they're bringing these recommendations forward, and the clerk is available online if you have any questions.
Thank you. Do we have any public comment on this item? Seeing none, we have a motion.
Moved.
Second.
Okay, thank you. Any council discussion?
Yeah, just a
Scott?
little more clarity on what it is exactly that it's out for the people.
Yeah, this is a licensing ordinance, and so it requires any manufactured home community receive an annual license, and there's an inspection associated with that license. Previously, there was a fee charge for that annual license. Now there's a state law change that prohibits us from charging a fee, but we can still license it. And staff recommends that we continue licensing in place just to make sure that we're really for the protection and safety of the residents that live within these communities, that we at least have an annual opportunity to visually inspect the area, meaning roads and sewer, all the systems are working. So that it really just removes the fee.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And I believe Councillor Anderson spoke to this briefly at our last meeting on January 21st as something that had come up when he and I were doing a conversation with councilors at the Hillcrest community before the holidays. And this was voiced by their manager as something that they had been concerned about. And so again, I don't know that we can take any credit, but I certainly support it. Any other comments or questions? With that, can we call the roll? Call the vote?
Counselor Doherty?
Yes.
Counselor Kane?
Yes.
Counselor Shu?
Yes.
Counselor Donovan?
Yes.
Counselor Anderson?
Yes.
Counselor Hayes?
Yes.
And Chairman Phelps?
Yes.
That's unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, order number 26-007, a 7 p.m. public hearing and second reading on the proposed amendments to Chapter 1015.A, Mobile Food Vendor Ordinance. Tony?
Thank you. I know the clerk went over this last meeting, but over the course of the past year, this was implemented in January of 2025. And listening to feedback from the public and from staff and from business owners, they evaluated and they proposed the amendments to change information. I believe one of the requirements is to add a ServSafe certification. The town clerk had or designate may approve seasonal renewal licenses.
They also have inspections can be waived by the code enforcement officer or the fire department if the applicant provides an appropriate inspection that's been passed in another municipality. And there's also an additional operating without a license. Again, we had a couple of instances where had some businesses that didn't have it. Also, since the last meeting, the town clerk received 2 emails from the chamber, and they support these recommendations.
Right. I would just add that though not part of this ordinance change, a certainly important companion is later on your agenda. It's fees associated with creating these kind of new tiers. And I think it's really that piece that the chambers in particular in support of.
Great. Thank you. Is there any public comment on this item? Seeing none, back to the council. Do we have a motion?
Move. Second.
All right. Any discussion? All right, we call the vote?
Counselor Doherty?
Yes.
Counselor Kane?
Yes.
Counselor Shu?
Yes.
Counselor Donovan?
Yes.
Counselor Anderson?
Yes.
Counselor Hayes?
Yes.
And Chairman Fellows?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Order number 26-008, 7 PM public hearing and second reading on the proposed amendments to chapter 1002, Shellfish Conservation Ordinance. And I will turn it over to our.
Good evening. So this is the ordinance that we've spoke about that we took the recommendations from the Department of Marine Resources and changed. I think you have the red line in front of you. I'll just quickly go through it again. Section 5, it takes out, again, we're putting it per day, not at each tide, so that we can make sure that when the double tides are, those guys can harvest. Under section 6 and 7, we're taking out complementary. On section 11, we're taking out only because it's a statement that they can only hold not more than 1 license. It's section D under conservation activities. We're getting rid of the on voluntary basis. We're adding also an additional 0.5 hours for each hour of survey conducted. So that would give them the ability for a 4-hour survey to give them 6 hours towards their conservation effort time. On page 6 at the very bottom, we've added social media and online posting because it was limited to newspapers and mailings and such. So we're coming into the 21st century.
Yeah.
And I believe the final section is under I for penalty. We've added another section of the state statute per DMR's request to be in compliance. And finally, under the method of harvesting, we've basically taken the state language and placed it in there.
Thank you. Do we have any public comment on this? Looks like we do.
I am David Lancaster, 186 Black Point Road. I'm a commercial clammer, been doing it for about 4 years. And I'm really just here to say that the price increase, we don't necessarily like to see it, but as long as we can stick around this $400 price, I think we can all agree on this. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone else? All right, thank you. Do we have a motion? Second down here. Any council discussion? Larry?
Can I just ask if this is not one of my specialties? And I'm curious if, as you were doing this, did you have input from the shell fishermen, and have you heard reaction one way or another on it, or?
Are we talking specifically to the ordinance?
The ordinance,
Yeah.
not the fee part,
Yeah,
yeah.
so this, the recommendations for the survey time to increase came from the commission. And then the other changes in there were a lot of verbiage change and just clarifications of some issues that DMR found in the ordinance.
Okay, great, thank you.
Yep.
Scott?
Yeah, I didn't hear anything in the presentation about the fee change, but I guess it is in there. And the claim digger says that they're fine with it. Last time I voted against it.
Yeah, I think that'll be that's next one up on deck. That'll be next.
Next on the agenda. Oh, okay, that's why it wasn't brought up. There's another agenda.
Yeah, right.
Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Any other questions, comments? Let's call the vote.
Counselor Doherty,
Yes.
Counselor Kane,
Yes.
Counselor Shu,
Yes.
Counselor Donovan,
Yes.
Counselor Anderson,
Yes.
Counselor Hayes.
Yes.
Chairman Phillips.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. And now order number 26-009, 7 PM public hearing and second reading on the proposed amendments to chapter 311, schedule of license, permit and application fees. This be you, Tony?
Yeah.
Right, thank you.
The harbor master will probably speak to the shellfish license fees. The town planner has submitted some recommendations, and as she notes here, it's to reflect the changes that she's making is to reflect the actual time spent on zoning determination letters and sign permits. And for the town clerk area, it's reflecting the changes, removing the manufactured housing community fees, as well as tiering the mobile food vendors license. And I believe on the one other one, oh, the food handlers is also to include an in-home business license to reduce the fee there, and as well as a temporary license for like a 1 or 2 day.
Thank you. Darren?
So my section of chapter 311, we took the recommendation of the council and we have graduated the fees at $100 per year to get to where we need to be on the state average. And other than that, everything remained the same.
Great, thank you. Any public comment on this one? Already heard feedback about fees, from the previous speaker. Anyone else? Great, thank you. Do we have a motion?
Moved.
We have a second. Any discussion or questions? Karen?
Sure. So again, with the shellfish fees, I think we heard comment that community was actually okay with it. I also just want to anecdotally, there's a Portland, Maine Facebook page, and someone was saying, where can I get a license? And they said, go to Scarborough, it's super cheap. And so I think it's pretty well known out there that we're super cheap, we're the lowest. So I know we want to minimize the impact, but I also feel like considering the time that's passed, and I don't know if it creates clerical issues for the clerk where you're changing fees, 1 year after another, if that creates issues and notices and things like that. But I just kind of wanted to say, while I want the fee to go up, I would have preferred it to stay at the original proposal that came out. Thanks.
Thank you. Anyone else? Larry?
I just anecdotally respond to that where I talked to Kristen Barth about the implementation of this, not in any towards changing anything, but she just said it's not a significant problem for them to manage that from year to year. And after 2026, unless we chose to change it again, it'll be that for the foreseeable future.
All right, thank you. Anyone else? Good. Okay.
Counselor Doherty,
No.
Counselor Kane,
Yes.
Counselor Shu,
Yes.
Counselor Donovan,
Yes.
Counselor Anderson,
Yes.
Counselor Hayes.
Yes.
Chairman Phillips.
Yes. Thank you. Order number 26-012, 7 PM public hearing and action on the new request for a liquor license from Shinanyu Pigeon Warnet, doing business as Taste ME, located at 680 US Route 1. Dodie?
Yes, thank you. As you might be aware, this individual was before the council last meeting for a food handler's license. As required for a first-time liquor license or any license, it's required by the town council for approval. Anytime after that, the town clerk can do it administratively, and they recommend approval.
Great. Thank you. Any public comment on this item? Seeing none, is there a motion?
Move.
All right, we have a second. Any discussion on this? We will call the vote then.
Counselor Kane, Counselor Donovan.
Doherty.
Doherty,
Thank you.
Sorry. Yes.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Counselor Kane.
Yes.
Counselor Shu.
Yes.
Counselor Donovan.
Yes.
Counselor Anderson.
Yes.
Counselor Hayes.
Yes.
Chairman Fellows.
Yes.
Sorry about my voice.
Thank you. All right, moving on to old business. Order number 26-013, act on the request to approve the names posted onto the various committees and boards as recommended by the Appointments and Negotiations Committee at the January 21st, 2026 Town Council meeting.
Yes, if I could, I would just make you aware, the town clerk was made aware earlier this week that Caitlin Berry, who was proposed to be second alternate to the Conservation Commission with a term expiring 2028, has advised that she's not able to accept that appointment. So rather than appointing her and having her resign, it would make sense, seems to me, for your next action to consider removing her name for appointment.
Okay.
This require a motion?
You have to put the motion on the floor and then amend.
Yeah, I believe it would be an amendment. So move the slate, if you will, and then you could say through amendment, just removing
you.
her name for consideration.
So Bill, as the chair of that committee, would you like to introduce this?
Yeah, I will say that we identified all of these in the committee. It was a very rewarding process. All the people who contribute to the town's committees. And when the appropriate moment comes, I will file the amendment that the town manager identified.
Great. Thank you. And those names were all read last time. We'll make you do that again.
Correct.
All right. Thank you. Is there any public comment on this item before we move to council action? With that, entertain a motion.
So moved.
All right, we have a seconded motion. Any discussion or Bill?
I'd like to make a motion to amend and to strike the name
Caitlin Berry.
Caitlin Berry from the appointment made for
Conservation Commission.
Conservation Commission.
And the understanding here would be that at a future date, the committee would designate someone to take
Correct.
her place.
Yeah.
Right.
So that's my motion.
Is there a second for that
Second.
amendment? Okay. Any discussion on the proposed amendment? Let's vote on the amendment.
Get this right. Counselor Doherty.
Yes.
Counselor Kane.
Yes.
Counselor Shu.
Yes.
Counselor Donovan.
Yes.
Counselor Anderson.
Yes.
Counselor Hayes.
Yes.
Chairman Fellows.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Now returning to the main motion, any discussion on that? All right. We will call the vote on the main motion.
Counselor Doherty.
Yes.
Counselor Kane.
Yes.
Counselor Shu.
Yes.
Counselor Donovan.
Yes.
Counselor Anderson.
Yes.
Counselor Hayes.
Yes.
Chairman Fellows.
Yes. Thank you. New business. First item, order number 26-014. Act on the request from the Shellfish Conservation Commission to approve the shellfish applications for the 2026 season. Back to our harbor master.
Good evening again. So the letter that I believe you have in front of you, based on the survey data and landings, the recommendation from the commission was to reduce the license allocation by 1 through attrition. The information was sent to DMR, and our area biologist working with her partners, they decided that the allocation will remain the same based on the survey data over the last 3 years of shellfish stock, along with the landings. So the letter that you have in front of you will be to maintain the exact same license allocation for the 2026 year.
So, thank you. Any public comment on this? Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Any discussion? Okay. We will call the vote.
Counselor Doherty.
Yes.
Counselor Kane.
Yes.
Counselor Shu.
Yes.
Counselor Donovan.
Yes.
Counselor Anderson.
Yes.
Counselor Hayes,
Yes.
and Chairman Bellows.
Yes. Thank you. Order number 26-015, act on the request to approve the annual seasonal road posting for weight restrictions if necessary from February 15th, 2026 to May 15th, 2026.
I'd like to say this is a rite of passage and perhaps a look to the future. But this is an annual process. Council needs to authorize the Public Works Director, who has the discretion to post roads or not. It is important that it says if necessary. I would note, last year, a few roads were posted at his discretion. The prior two seasons, in spite the fact that he did have authorization, he didn't have to. I would fully expect this year with the deep frost and kind of the heaves that we're all experiencing, there will be fairly widespread road posting, but they'll monitor that very closely. Even with that, we do our best to work with local contractors that have a need to get to a site. Generally speaking, they're able to traverse the roads before 9 in the morning while frost is still on the ground. So we'll do our best to accommodate, but we look for your approval tonight.
Great. Thank you. Any public comment on this item? Seeing none, is there a motion?
Move.
Any discussion? No? Okay. Let's call vote. We will then call
Counselor
vote.
Doherty, I'm sorry.
Yes.
Counselor Kane.
Yes.
Counselor Shu.
Yes.
Counselor Donovan.
Yes.
Counselor Anderson.
Yes.
Counselor Hayes.
Yes.
Chairman Bellows.
Yes.
That's all my voice.
All right. Get one more chance here. Order number 26-016. Act to authorize the town manager to provide written comments and recommendations to LD 2173 and act to update the laws regarding housing developments and accessory dwelling units and to provide testimony if necessary.
Yeah, I think the title speaks volumes. As I mentioned during my report, this testimony was really derived through our planning director, Autumn Spear. She consulted, I know, with input from Councilor Anderson and Councilor Hayes, I know for certain, as well as many of her municipal colleagues. And so I think this is fairly well-informed, insightful, and I think helpful. We intentionally tried to be productive in these comments rather than critical. We see an opportunity, and you all witnessed through our conversation with the legislative delegation, there seems to be some willingness, and so we're hoping that's the case. I would note that the title of this action is quite specific, talks about written comment, and it directs me. I guess I would look for your latitude, and I don't think it requires any change here. There may be a member of council, and verbal testimony may be more effective. So I think the point still holds that looking for your blessing that generally speaking, this testimony can be offered on your behalf and behalf of our residents, whether it's me and whether it's done written or verbal remains to be seen.
Thank you. Any public comment on this? We have a motion.
To move.
Oh, sorry.
Good evening. My name is Bill Shanahan, and I'm the chair of the Affordable Housing Alliance. And our alliance lags behind the council a bit on this item, but we thought it was important that I try to convey to you that we support this initiative. And the town has always been pro-housing and supportive of housing, to its credit. And we think that you should continue with that effort. I think the council's been clear about identifying the shortage of housing statewide, and I think 1829 was a statewide legislative initiative to try to address that. But by the same token, I think the town of Scarborough has a good case, and I think advocating for the kind of changes that were outlined in the planner's memo to Tom, I think appropriate. And not only me, but I think the Alliance is behind that. And we just wanted to kind of weigh in, if you will.
Right.
Thank you.
Thanks, Bill. Any other comment on this? want to miss anybody else. I thought he was leaving. All right. With that, do we have a motion?
Moved.
Okay. Any discussion? Larry?
Once, I just want to offer thanks for all the work that went into this. We obviously are all really conscious and involved in how 1829 and this corrective action might impact the town. And I think staff has done, and with support from counselors, have done a great job of giving specific action items to this corrective committee so that they can hear what the town has to say, but also have very definitive solutions that we're proposing. So I just appreciate the effort.
Thanks. Anyone else?
Just, Mr. Chair, I should mention, I think we're the envy of many of our neighbors. My full phone rings almost daily, and I credit the council for really staying on top of this. Starting, I think, January 7th, you had your first discussion on the matter, and a resolution passed stating very clear concern. And then that followed up with a very productive session with your legislative delegation, and now this, all very timely, all kind of leading the state. And you should be proud that you've really kind of rose to the occasion and mobilized very quickly.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'll just jump in on that. I mean, I think the group as a whole has done a great job. I think the legislatures coming here really made an impact. I think we learned from them, but I think they learned a lot from us. I was very pleased with Representative Sophie Warren sending us a follow-up the next day. And then I spent a couple hours with her again after that meeting. And then I think she sent us some I said, you know, be surgical and trying to point us in the right direction, because we don't want to look like we're saying no to everything. And we want to be really specific on, you know, where we do support it, but also where we want to augment what's been presented. I think she did a great job in supporting us on that. And I really want to thank Autumn. I think she did an outstanding job putting this document together. I spent a couple hours with her last week just asking her a million questions and attempting to at least start my education there, but she was just receptive and knowledgeable. And I'm very pleased with the document, and I fully endorse Tom going up there and speaking for us or whomever goes. And I think this represents well what we've been trying to do.
Thank you. Yeah, I would echo a lot of that, or all of that really. And not to sound like sort of patting ourselves on the back, but I think this was an example of you know, a really good collaborative effort, and, you know, within a fairly short time frame. And I was really appreciative of the legislators coming here, including Speaker Fecto, and meeting with us, and then the follow through beyond that to really keep us in the loop on how things were moving forward. And then when it came to actually providing constructive comments and edits for the legislation, anyone who's familiar with that process knows it's really just kind of mundane, roll up your sleeves type work, and you really have to get into the details. And so I really appreciate the work that Autumn and others did on that, and the counselors who weighed in and sent their comments in. Because having success with legislation requires that attention to detail and that kind of persistence, and you have to do it often quickly. And you know, on the theme of the testimony, I also certainly endorse Tom testifying in written form or however on the council's behalf, based on the document that we've all reviewed and the comments that we've all given. It's been mentioned before, but any member of the council or anyone from the public can provide written or verbal testimony. And I think there is information about that online and on the town website. So I would encourage anyone who has an interest to do that. That is the 10th.
Yes.
1 o'clock. So please make a note of that. Anyone else? Want to make sure we haven't heard from Councilor Anderson on this. I just want to make sure his button's not broken. Okay.
2 thumbs up.
Great. All right. Let the record show. With that, I will call the vote on this, or ask Cody to.
Counselor Doran.
Yes.
Counselor King.
Yes.
Counselor Shu.
Yes.
Counselor Donovan.
Yes.
Counselor Anderson.
Yes.
Counselor Hayes.
Yes.
And Chairman Phillips.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Item number 10, non-action items. There are none. Moving on to item 11, it's general council member comments. Karen?
I will start because I know we had some comments and I know we got flooded with some emails about the animal control ordinance. And so I really wanted to address that immediately so I can kind of put that information out there. So in December, I was nominated as the chair of the ordinance committee, which I'm very grateful for that position and that role. And prior to our goal setting session, I had an email from a counselor and other information sent to me saying, can we make amendments to the animal control ordinance in regards to the plovers? Because, I think the recommendation from the state was something a little bit different than what we're actively practicing. I take my job seriously as the ordinance chair, and I did not want to just completely ignore a request that was coming from a counselor, from other groups, and anytime a resident comes with me with a concern, I'm not going to just ignore them. I also kind of want to at least give them the time to hear what they have to say. So prior to our goal setting session, I did reach out to the state. So I want to be clear, no one reached out to the federal government. No one has talked to the federal government. I was told we had a contact at the state, spoke to them and just said, I don't know what I'm looking at. My understanding is they're in communication with the Plover group, and this was not new information that was being provided to them. Also, I've only been the chair of ordinance this is my second year. There was no are we doing something wrong? It was it was just more of a question, as that is our expert. That is the person we have an agreement with. I think the staff recommendations and the expert recommendations are kind of what that agreement was. Then we had our goal setting session after that. And so I think, while I appreciate that no one wants to address that, I also think we have a group of residents who I think they came out, and we did get emails last year about concerns about it. And I didn't want to just completely ignore it. Did not expect the state to do anything more. Reached out for please educate me. What are we doing? Can we do something better? I think we just need to enforce our ordinances a little bit better down at the beaches. But so I just really want to put it out there that there was no, I wasn't trying to tattle on any one group. Never said this data is solid data. I didn't know really what I was looking at. And I think it's also, we have a group of 50+ Plover volunteers who are doing the best that they can. They take that job very seriously. They gather the data. I spoke to a Plover volunteer today who quit because she said they were making her cry. So I think I didn't want to ignore the fact that there is an ongoing issue. I honestly do not know what the state's intention are. I have no idea. But I also felt like when you're giving a lot of data and you're getting feedback from people in our town, our population has exploded since then. I didn't think it was wrong to touch base and see where we were at with that situation. Ultimately, nothing can change from our animal control ordinance without the support of the council. And I don't want this council to get dragged down with something that happened before we got together as a council and said, we don't want to address this. So I just really wanted to make it clear. This wasn't a council action. This was the chair of the ordinance committee going, I don't know what I'm looking at. Can I get some feedback? Because I completely hear the feedback from the residents, but there are also residents who are spending a lot of time gathering the data and things like that. Like Corey said, I don't think there's really much we can do until something comes down from the state. I don't think again, in the one conversation I had with the guy from the state, I don't anticipate anything earth-shattering coming from them. And I don't think it would be something like, oh, you're in trouble now, or things like that. So, just doing my job as a due diligence, if any resident comes to me with some concerns or an ordinance proposal, if it's a goal or not, I do feel like I want to give residents and also my fellow counselors the respect to at least do a little research behind what they're asking to put on the ordinance committee agenda. With that being said, I think our council's made it pretty clear how we feel about this. And so, I don't want to create another issue for us the coming year, but I also don't want to ignore the fact that we do have residents who are reaching out and expressing concern with the current situation. I'm happy to talk to anyone. I will tell you, no one has reached out to me to date to ask me what that conversation was. So it's just been a lot of speculation about what's happened. So I think I'm happy to talk to anyone if they have concerns about what happened. I think I'm worried that one tiny phone call and one question has kind of spiraled into more than this. But obviously it's on everyone's radar, and all we can do is wait and see what the state does. Thanks.
Thank you. Larry?
Yeah, I appreciate everything you said, Karen, and kind of coming to some transparency around it is helpful. My disappointment was the process, once again, where I think the respect that you're saying from your fellow counselors and all, it would have gone a long way, I think, to ask for collaboration, and rather than send just one piece of data, maybe with some collaboration, we would have found other data to send along with that. So a decision by IFW wasn't based upon one data set that I think has some suspect conclusions drawn from it. And so again, I think it was kind of the process. I agree with you 100%. Nothing that's happened to date affects the animal ordinance in any way. But it's opened the door for not only our body to consider changing it, but now possibly either mandates or suggestions from the state. And I think the process and the effort could have been done differently so that a more balanced report went into the state. Thanks.
Thanks. Anyone else? Scott?
Yeah, I've known Tody for 40 years. But sometimes you get a mental block, right? She's excellent, excellent woman. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll second that. Anyone else?
Sorry, I have one.
Go ahead.
I just want to give Chairman Fellow some support around handling the public comment session. It's a really difficult task. I think you were very clear with the callers, and I give you a lot of credit for as you make those decisions. I understand that it's hard, but I think we just have to keep reiterating the rules and be consistent, and I appreciate how you did it.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Third that, yeah.
Okay, thank you. I mean, as I said at our last meeting, I take First Amendment very seriously. And I feel like it's part of what I'm entrusted with, or any chair is entrusted with, is honoring that. And but we also have to respect everyone else who's here and the business that we have to conduct. And to sort of paraphrase a little bit, it may be difficult to define exactly what constitutes offensive or disruptive, but you usually know it when you see it or hear it. And I won't tolerate anti-Semitic, racist, or other similar language, or language that's clearly intended to be purely disruptive. So if, I'm certainly open. I appreciate the support. I'm certainly open to any input folks might have about how we handle things going forward. Could be a potential topic for Rules and Policies Committee. But I guess I'll leave it at that, but I do appreciate the support. Any other council comments? All right. With that, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All right, one more roll call vote before we get to go.
Doherty.
Yes.
Counselor Kane.
Yes.
Counselor Shu.
Yes.
Counselor Donovan.
Yes.
Counselor Anderson.
Yes.
Counselor Hayes.
Yes.
And Chairman Fellows.
Yes,
Thank you.
thank you.